My name is Joon Park, and before my life became a public argument against basic anatomy, I was the stiffest 24-year-old man alive. I do not mean emotionally stiff. I mean physically tragic. If I dropped a coin, I had to decide whether the coin was worth seeing my family again. Touching my toes required negotiations. Turning around in the shower involved a three-point maneuver. Once, I slept wrong and spent 2 days moving like a haunted office chair. So when I woke up one Monday morning with a glowing blue message floating above my face, I assumed I was either dreaming or finally being collected by the ghost of bad posture. The message said my flexibility would increase by 1% every day. It also said my strength would not decrease, my joints would remain stable, and my body would automatically adapt to the new range of motion. That was it. No tutorial. No heroic destiny. No demon king. No mysterious old man telling me I had inherited the secret art of premium yoga. Just 1% more flexible every day. I stared at the message for a full minute, then tried touching my toes. My fingers reached my ankles. That was already 6 centimeters farther than yesterday. I stood up so fast I nearly headbutted the wall. At first, the change was boring in the best possible way. On the second day, I could bend enough to tie my shoes without making the noise of a dying walrus. On the 5th day, I could sit cross-legged without one knee hovering in the air like it had a personal objection. By the 10th day, I could put both palms flat on the floor. I became obsessed. Every morning, I tested something new. I reached behind my back. I raised my leg. I twisted my torso. I tried one of those yoga poses where people look like decorative table lamps. Each time, the answer was the same. Yesterday, impossible. Today, easy. The weird part was that I never felt loose or weak. My knees did not wobble. My shoulders did not feel unstable. If anything, I felt more controlled. It was like my body had unlocked extra settings while keeping all the old ones. By day 17, I could scratch any point on my back with either hand. Do you understand what kind of power that is? Forget immortality. Forget laser eyes. I had become independent from door frames. I stood in my bathroom for 5 minutes scratching the exact spot between my shoulder blades that had tormented me since middle school, and I am not ashamed to say I almost cried. My spine had finally stopped being a government employee and started doing its damn job. I kept the ability secret because I had no idea what was happening. But secrets become difficult when your body starts treating geometry like a suggestion. The first person to notice was Mina Choi, my coworker at a tiny video editing studio called Mango Planet Media. There was nothing planetary about it. We had 6 employees, 1 broken printer, and a manager who believed free instant coffee counted as a health benefit. At that point, my spine was basically running an OnlyFans for chiropractors, and every joint was posting premium shit. Mina sat across from me and spent most days editing short videos while whispering insults at clients under her breath. On day 23, I dropped a memory card under my desk. Normally, I would have rolled my chair backward and crouched down. Instead, without thinking, I bent sideways at the waist, slid my upper body under the desk while my hips remained in the chair, reached around my own leg, grabbed the card, and returned upright. Mina stopped typing. I stopped breathing. She slowly looked over the top of her monitor. I pretended nothing had happened. She replayed what she had just seen in her mind. I could tell because her eyebrows were moving like 2 lawyers reviewing evidence. Then she asked me to do it again. I refused. She offered me $5. I did it again. That was the first mistake. The second mistake was letting her record it. The third mistake was assuming she would keep the recording private. By lunch, she had posted a 6-second clip to her private social account with the caption, "Coworker just folded under the desk like unpaid rent." By dinner, it had 200,000 views. By midnight, strangers were arguing about whether I had bones. One comment said I moved like a cockroach trying to hide from child support. I laughed so hard I folded forward and accidentally rested my forehead on the backs of my knees, which only made Mina record another clip. The next morning, our manager called me into his office. I expected to be fired for turning the workplace into a human pretzel channel. Instead, he asked if I could do it while holding the company logo. That should have warned me how quickly my life was about to become stupid. On day 28, Mango Planet filmed me reaching through the gap between 2 filing cabinets to retrieve a dropped pen. The gap was barely wide enough for my shoulder. I rotated my arm backward, rolled the shoulder inward, flattened my chest against the cabinet, and somehow threaded half my body into the space without pain. The video exploded online. On day 31, Mina signed me up for a local limbo contest without telling me. She claimed it was research. I claimed she was a parasite with bangs. The contest took place at a beach-themed restaurant nowhere near a beach. The prize was $500 and a year of free grilled chicken. I had no interest until Mina reminded me that my refrigerator contained mustard, half an onion, and something in a plastic container that had developed its own political system. So I entered. The other contestants were dancers, gymnasts, and one terrifying grandmother who looked 80 but had hamstrings forged by ancient gods. The bar dropped lower each round. At 1 meter, everyone cheered. At 70 centimeters, half the contestants were gone. At 50 centimeters, only the grandmother and I remained. She glared at me. I respected her immediately. The bar dropped to 40 centimeters. I looked like a sex toy designed by a geometry teacher who had just survived a nasty divorce. She passed under it with the grace of a sword master. Then it was my turn. I leaned back, lower, lower. My knees bent forward while my chest bent backward. My hips sank. My head rotated sideways. I passed under the bar with my nose 3 centimeters from the floor. The restaurant went silent. The grandmother looked at me, nodded once, then walked over and slapped my shoulder like she had just approved my marriage application. The bar dropped again. 30 centimeters. The staff started whispering that this might be dangerous. I was also whispering that this might be dangerous, but my body felt completely fine. So I did something deeply cursed. I bent backward until the top of my head pointed between my ankles. Then I rotated my shoulders, angled my ribcage sideways, and slid under the bar like a crab designed by someone with a personal hatred of chiropractors. Halfway through, one guy in the audience yelled that I looked like a dropped condom trying to crawl home. That sentence was so foul I nearly lost from laughing. I won the money, the chicken, and a new problem. The clip hit 6 million views in 2 days. People started calling me Noodle Man. I hated the name immediately. Mina loved it, which meant the name survived. By day 40, stretching was no longer stretching. I could pull one leg behind my head and still stand. I could rotate my shoulders so far that my arms crossed behind my back and returned on the other side. I could sit on the floor, spread my legs, and lower my chest completely flat while eating cereal. I discovered that last one because Mina dared me. She was responsible for at least 30% of my bad decisions. The other 70% came from curiosity and rent. Brands began sending messages. Yoga studios wanted demonstrations. Fitness channels wanted collaborations. A furniture company asked me to test a reclining chair because apparently someone in marketing had lost control of their life. I said no to almost everything. I still did not understand the ability. I kept expecting a cost to appear. Maybe my bones would weaken. Maybe my muscles would tear. Maybe one morning I would sneeze and collapse into a decorative knot. So I went to a sports clinic and paid for every test I could afford. The doctor checked joint stability, strength, mobility, muscle output, balance, and tissue response. Nothing was wrong. Actually, the results were better than before. My strength was unchanged, but because I could move through larger angles, I could apply that strength from positions that should have been useless. I could pull while twisted, push while folded, brace while bent. The doctor kept asking if I had trained gymnastics. I told him I had trained sitting at a computer for 9 years. He stopped asking questions after I rotated my left foot almost backward while keeping the knee stable. His face looked like his medical degree had just texted him, "We need to talk." My skeleton had the energy of a drunk group chat at 3 in the morning. No rules, terrible decisions, and somebody's ass was definitely involved. That afternoon I realized flexibility was only half the ability. The real advantage was access. Normal people had strong positions and weak positions. My body was starting to have fewer weak positions because there were fewer angles I could not reach. That discovery became important on day 47, when I got trapped in an elevator with Mina and a delivery man carrying 12 boxes of pudding. The elevator stopped between floors with a violent jerk. The lights flickered. Mina immediately started filming because she had the survival instincts of a raccoon with a content calendar. The emergency speaker worked, but maintenance said it could take an hour. That would have been fine if the delivery man had not looked at the boxes and announced that the pudding needed refrigeration. He said it with such heartbreak that I felt like we were transporting donor organs. There was a service hatch in the ceiling, but a metal panel blocked access. The gap around the panel was tiny. Mina looked at the gap. Then she looked at me. I told her absolutely not. 3 minutes later, I was standing on top of a pudding box. I raised both arms, turned one shoulder almost completely inward, crossed my wrists, and pushed my hands through the narrow opening beside the hatch. Once my forearms were through, I rotated my elbows in a way that made the delivery man whisper a prayer. I found the manual latch. I opened the hatch. Then came the difficult part. The opening was wide enough for a normal person to climb through, but the top of the elevator was crowded with equipment. There was only a narrow route to the maintenance platform. I squeezed through, twisted sideways, folded one knee against my ribs, rotated my hips, and crawled across the top like an insect with a mortgage. I reached the maintenance ladder and opened the outer door from above. Everyone got out safely. The pudding survived. Mina's video reached 12 million views. The delivery company sent me a lifetime coupon for pudding, not money, pudding. I stared at the email for a full minute and realized capitalism had somehow turned my mutant flexibility into dairy rewards. By day 53, my manager wanted me in every company video. By day 56, strangers recognized me on the subway. By day 60, I had enough flexibility to create the first moment that genuinely scared me. I was walking home when an electric scooter came flying around a corner. The rider had one hand on the handlebar and the other holding a drink the size of an aquarium. There was no time to step away. My body reacted before my brain did. I planted one foot. My torso bent sideways almost 90 degrees. Then more. My spine curved around the scooter's path while my hips stayed in place. The handlebar passed beneath my ribs. The rider missed me by centimeters and crashed into a stack of cardboard boxes. I straightened. He stared at me. There is no dignified way to explain that your pelvis just rage quit its assigned coordinates like a petty little bastard. I stared at him. His drink landed upright. That was the most impossible part. A security camera had captured everything. The clip spread overnight. Now the internet was not asking whether I was flexible. They were asking whether I was human. One person slowed the footage down and drew lines over my body like they were analyzing a supernatural assassination. Another claimed I was computer graphics. Another said I had the bone structure of a tax-dodging ferret. My favorite comment said, "Bro dodged that scooter like his spine had a side chick and needed plausible deniability." I printed that one and put it on my desk. Then, on day 63, a message appeared in my inbox from a man named Victor Han. Victor was famous in the performance world. He was a professional contortionist, escape artist, and variety show celebrity known as the Rubber Saint. He had trained for 20 years. He could fit inside boxes, escape ropes, and bend backward far enough to drink from a glass placed behind his feet. His message contained 9 words. He wanted to challenge me publicly. Mina read it over my shoulder and screamed so loudly the broken office printer finally turned on. I wanted to ignore him. Then I saw his video. Victor sat in a dramatic black room wearing a silver suit and accused me of using edited footage, hidden wires, and cheap internet trickery. He said flexibility required discipline, pain, patience, and years of training. He said people like me insulted the art. That part actually bothered me. Not because he was wrong about the training. He was right. I had done nothing to earn my ability. I had not stretched through pain for years. I had not trained as a child. I woke up one day with a glowing message and started getting bendier like some cursed loyalty program. But I had also never claimed to be better than anyone. I was just a guy trying to get free chicken and survive office life. So I agreed to the challenge. Mina immediately began planning what she called the flexible beef arc. I told her never to say those words again. She said it again 12 times. The event was scheduled for day 70. I had 1 week. For the first time, I started training seriously, not to become more flexible. That happened automatically. I trained control. I practiced moving through weird positions without losing balance. I crawled under chairs without touching them. I climbed stairs backward while folded. I tried holding weights while twisted. I practiced falling safely from different angles. Every day, the new 1% made yesterday's impossible movement feel slightly more natural. It was like trying to master a video game where the controls changed every morning, except the controller was my pelvis. That sentence sounds disgusting. It also became medically accurate. By the day of the challenge, I could bend backward until my shoulders nearly touched the backs of my thighs. I could rotate one leg around the side of my torso and place my foot near my chest. I could cross my arms behind my head, bring them down my back, and return them under my ribs without letting go. I was moving like a cursed thirst trap filmed by Satan's least supervised intern, which felt unfair to both Satan and interns. I looked less like a human being and more like somebody had clicked randomized skeleton in a character creator. The challenge took place on a live variety show. The studio audience was packed. Victor entered first, wearing white, because apparently being flexible also required dressing like a final boss at a luxury spa. I entered in sweatpants because Mina had forgotten to tell me there was a wardrobe department. The first event was simple. Escape from ropes. Victor went first. 3 crew members tied his wrists behind his back, wrapped rope around his arms, chest, waist, and ankles, then secured everything with knots checked by an independent referee. Victor escaped in 42 seconds. The audience exploded. He was incredible. He used technique, timing, and tiny movements I could barely follow. Then it was my turn. The crew tied me even tighter because the host thought it would be funny. My wrists were behind my back. My elbows were bound. My chest was wrapped. My ankles were tied together. The timer started. I tried copying Victor's technique for approximately 1 second. Then I realized I had no idea what I was doing, so I cheated with anatomy. I rotated both shoulders downward. My elbows turned inward. My wrists moved under my hips. I pulled my bound arms beneath me, folded my knees to my chest, stepped through the loop of my own arms, and brought my hands to the front. The ropes were still tight. I simply rearranged where my body was inside them. Then I folded my thumbs against my palms, narrowed my hands, twisted my wrists, and slid one hand free. 9 seconds. The studio went silent. Victor looked like I had broken into his childhood and slapped his first trophy. The host asked if that was legal. The referee checked the rules. The rules had not considered the possibility that a contestant might temporarily behave like warm mozzarella. It counted. The second event was a transparent escape box. Victor escaped through a hidden mechanism in under a minute. My box had no hidden mechanism. It was just a cube with a circular air hole 12 centimeters wide. I stared at the hole. The audience stared at me. The producer had clearly designed it as a joke. Then I pushed my hand through. My wrist followed. Then my forearm. I rotated my shoulder forward, compressed my upper body as much as I could, and tried to angle my head. The hole was obviously too small. Even I knew that, so I stopped. Victor smiled. Then I noticed the panel around the hole had 4 bolts on the outside. I could not reach the bolts normally, but my arm could bend around the edge of the box while my shoulder remained partially inside the hole. I curved my forearm back toward the panel, reached one bolt with my fingertips, and started turning it. The host fell to his knees laughing. It took 4 minutes, but I removed all 4 bolts from inside the sealed box by reaching around the outside like a human question mark. Somewhere, an anatomy textbook was probably whispering, "This bitch is cheating." And honestly, it had a case. The panel dropped. I climbed out. Victor did not smile after that. The final event was called the Impossible Corridor. It was a transparent maze built from bars, rings, narrow gaps, and moving panels. The goal was to reach the end without touching a red sensor. Victor was faster than me at first. He had real training. He knew how to distribute weight and control his breathing. He slipped through the first obstacles like smoke. I followed awkwardly. Then we reached the rotating ring section. Each ring had a different opening, and they turned independently. Victor had to wait for the openings to align. I did not. I went through sideways, then diagonally, then with one shoulder forward and one hip backward. At the narrowest ring, I rotated my torso until my chest faced one direction and my hips faced another. Mina, watching from the side, shouted that I looked like a cursed action figure found under a divorced dad's couch. The audience lost it. I passed Victor. At the final obstacle, 2 padded walls moved together, leaving a gap that narrowed every second. I should have sprinted. Instead, I had a terrible idea. I turned sideways and let the walls close around me. The gap became 30 centimeters, then 20, then 15. I raised one arm above my head, folded the other across my stomach, rotated my shoulders and hips in opposite directions, and flattened my posture until I was almost edge on. The walls stopped at 12 centimeters. I was still inside. The studio became completely silent. Then I slid forward. Slowly, my body moved through the narrow channel like a letter being pushed through a mail slot. When my head emerged, the host screamed. When my shoulders emerged, one cameraman backed away. When the rest of me slid out, Victor stared at me for 3 full seconds and then started laughing. Not angry laughing, real laughing. He walked over, shook my hand, and admitted the obvious. He had no idea what the hell I was. Neither did I. But that night, after the show ended and my follower count increased by another 1,000,000, something new appeared above my bed. It was the same blue message as before. Only this time, there was a second line. It said my body had reached the first adaptation threshold, and tomorrow, the definition of flexibility would expand. I did not sleep much that night. At 6 in the morning, I opened my eyes and immediately saw the new message. My flexibility had increased by another 1%. Underneath that, a new sentence explained what the threshold meant. Until now, most of the changes had involved my joints and muscles. From that day forward, the connective structures around them would adapt more aggressively too. My body would remain strong and protected, but it could tolerate positions that previously required not just wider joints but actual compression and shifting. I read the sentence 5 times. Then I did what any responsible adult would do. My body had become the physical equivalent of texting you up to geometry at 2 in the morning and then making several irresponsible choices. I tried to fit inside my laundry basket. The basket was plastic, rectangular, and barely wide enough for my hips. 5 minutes later, I was entirely inside it. My knees were beside my ears. My shoulders overlapped at a diagonal. One arm curved beneath my thighs and my feet rested somewhere behind my neck. I was comfortable. That was the disturbing part. I could breathe normally. I could have taken a nap. Then I realized I had no way to unfold without knocking the basket over. So when Mina arrived at my apartment because I had stopped answering messages, she found me lying sideways inside a laundry basket eating a cereal bar. She stared at me. I stared back. She asked why. I said science. She said I looked like somebody had tried to smuggle a grown man through airport security as emotional support luggage. Then she took a photo before helping me out, because friendship is apparently just blackmail with snacks. Victor contacted me later that morning. Instead of another challenge, he invited me to his training studio. I expected a fancy celebrity gym. What I found was a warehouse full of ropes, boxes, chains, suspended rings, rotating frames, padded walls, trapdoors, locks, and objects that looked illegal in at least 3 historical periods. Victor explained that flexibility without technique would eventually get me embarrassed or trapped. I had relied on brute mobility during the show, but if I wanted to use the ability intelligently, I needed to understand leverage, breathing, body positioning, balance, and escape mechanics. He offered to teach me. I accepted immediately. Not because I was suddenly dedicated to the art, because he had a coffee machine that cost more than my car. Training with Victor changed everything. He taught me how escape artists create tiny pockets of space when ropes are applied. He taught me how to shift pressure from one area of the body to another. He showed me how to control panic when movement was restricted. Then I ruined 20 years of his professional knowledge by doing things no student was supposed to be able to do. He tied my elbows behind my back. I rotated them around my sides. He put me in a canvas restraint jacket. I folded both shoulders inward, brought one arm under my ribs, and escaped through the neck opening. He locked me in a wooden crate. I discovered that if I brought my knees beneath my chin, rotated one shoulder, and flattened my chest, I could reach the screws on the floor panel with my toes. Victor stared at the opened crate and said I was not learning escape artistry. I was bullying containers. He was right. By day 78, he had created an entirely separate training category for me, labeled things Joon should not physically be able to attempt. That category became my favorite. Mina began filming selected sessions, and our videos became a full side business. I left Mango Planet after my manager tried to put my face on a branded office chair without asking. Mina left the same afternoon because she had been waiting 2 years for an excuse. If a chiropractor had watched from 10 feet away, their student debt would have packed a bag and left the profession. We rented a tiny studio and started producing our own channel. The concept was simple. People sent us challenges involving flexibility, escape, and ridiculous spaces. We chose the funniest, safe ones, and I tried them. The first challenge was getting into a locked compact car through a half-open window without damaging anything. The window gap was 13 centimeters. I put one hand through first, then my forearm. I turned my shoulder, slid my head sideways, folded one ear against my skull, and slowly fed myself through the opening. Halfway in, my belt caught on the glass. I spent 30 seconds suspended with my ass outside the car and my face pressed against the passenger seat, while Mina laughed so hard she had to sit on the pavement. There are moments when a man must consider his dignity. There are also moments when his dignity is hanging out of a hatchback window like a gas station hot dog, and the only option is to continue. I removed the belt with one foot. Then I finished squeezing inside. The video got 20 million views. The second challenge involved a vending machine. A viewer asked whether I could retrieve a stuck snack without shaking the machine. Obviously, I could not put my whole body inside a vending machine. I am ridiculous, not liquid, but I could reach farther than anyone expected. I put my hand through the delivery slot, then my arm, then my shoulder. My upper body bent downward while my hips stayed outside. I curved my arm upward through the internal chute, rotated my elbow around a divider, and reached the trapped bag of chips. I pulled it free. Then I noticed another stuck bag, then another. Apparently that vending machine had been stealing from people for months. I recovered 11 snacks and felt like I had exposed a criminal empire. The machine owner arrived while my arm was still inside and looked at me like he had just caught a raccoon committing tax fraud. We explained everything. He gave us the snacks. I ate 3 bags on camera and called it restitution. By day 82, our subscriber count passed 5 million. That was when companies started offering real money. Most requests were normal enough. Sports brands wanted movement demonstrations. Fitness apps wanted sponsored videos. Escape room companies wanted me to test difficult rooms. Then a luxury furniture company offered me $10,000 to prove their new recliner could accommodate all natural sitting positions. That sentence was an act of hubris. The chair was displayed at a design expo in front of journalists. It looked beautiful. White leather, automatic adjustments, heated cushions, more buttons than a submarine. The company representative proudly said the chair adapted to the human body. I asked whether the chair had ever met my human body. He laughed. He stopped laughing 90 seconds later. I sat normally first, then cross-legged, then with both legs over one armrest, then with one foot behind my head, then with both feet behind my head. My limbs were behaving like they had snorted powdered Wi-Fi and discovered free will, which is a sentence I regret understanding. The chair kept adjusting. I rotated sideways, folded my knees against my chest, placed one shoulder on the seat, and somehow arranged myself in a shape resembling a lowercase paperclip. The chair made a confused mechanical noise. I shifted again. The backrest reclined. The footrest extended. The lumbar support inflated. The chair began trying to solve me. I could hear motors working under the leather like tiny engineers screaming. Then I curled into a ring, slid beneath one armrest, and sat upside down with my head near the floor while my hips remained on the cushion. The chair froze. Every adjustment light blinked at once. Mina whispered that I had given a $10,000 recliner an existential crisis. Then smoke came out of the control panel. Not dangerous smoke. Just enough smoke to destroy the company's slogan in front of 12 reporters. The representative looked like his soul had left through his business casual khakis. The company still paid me. They also changed the marketing from all natural sitting positions to most conventional sitting positions. I consider that a contribution to consumer honesty. The next offer was much stranger. A private security company wanted me to test physical access points in a new office building. They did not want hacking. They did not want lockpicking. They wanted to know whether a person could enter through spaces their designers had considered too small for human access. That was apparently now my professional category. Human access uncertainty. I spent the first hour walking around the building with Victor and 2 security engineers. The engineers showed me ventilation grills, maintenance gaps, cable channels, ceiling spaces, and service panels. Most were obviously too small. Then I found a rectangular maintenance opening behind a decorative wall panel. It was 18 centimeters high and 40 centimeters wide. One engineer said no adult could pass through it. I had heard that sentence enough times to recognize it as a personal invitation. I lay on the floor. I extended both arms forward. I rotated my shoulders until they narrowed. I turned my head sideways, flattened my chest as much as possible, and exhaled. My ribs did not collapse. They simply shifted enough to lower my profile. I pushed forward. My head went through, then one shoulder, then the other. I moved my hips diagonally, one side at a time. My legs followed. I emerged inside a utility room 3 meters away. The engineers stared through the opening. One of them quietly removed his glasses and cleaned them, as though clearer vision might make me less offensive to architecture. I opened the utility room door from inside. They immediately added a security grate to the design. For the next 6 hours, I found 8 more access problems. A ceiling gap above a restroom partition, a narrow service tunnel under a raised floor, a 40-centimeter opening behind an air conditioning unit. At one point, I entered a locked conference room through a cable port and came out beneath the table during a meeting simulation. I had the posture of a horny paperclip and the confidence of a man who had stopped respecting consequences. The security director screamed. I screamed because he screamed. Then Mina screamed because both of us screamed. Victor just pinched the bridge of his nose. The director later described the test as extremely valuable. I described it as getting paid to become office vermin. The job changed how I thought about my power again. Every building was full of spaces designed around assumptions about the human body. Shoulders are this wide. Hips cannot rotate that way. Heads do not fit through that opening. Knees cannot bend backward far enough to make that turn. Except mine increasingly could. The world had been built for normal geometry. I was slowly becoming an exploit. That thought should have made me feel powerful. Instead, it made me spend 20 minutes wondering whether I could sleep inside a kitchen cabinet. I could. The next morning, Mina found me there because she had come over to discuss sponsorships. She opened the cabinet under the sink and saw my face upside down between a stack of cleaning cloths and a bottle of dish soap. She did not scream. She simply closed the cabinet again. That hurt more. I opened it from inside and asked why she was not surprised. She said surprise requires hope. Fair. Day 86 brought my first accidental rescue that had nothing to do with an elevator. Mina and I were walking through a neighborhood market when we heard a child crying beside an old apartment building. His cat had slipped through a damaged basement window and crawled behind a wall during renovation work. The workers could hear the cat but could not reach it without removing several panels. The gap behind the wall was maybe 25 centimeters at the widest point and narrowed farther inside. I looked at Mina. Mina was already taking out her phone. I told her not to film the kid. She immediately lowered the camera. That was one thing about Mina. She treated my dignity like public property, but she knew where the real lines were. I crawled into the basement opening. The first section was easy. Then the gap narrowed. I moved one shoulder forward, folded my arms along my sides, and slid through using tiny pushes from my toes. Dust covered my face. A pipe blocked the path. There was no room to climb over it normally, so I bent around it. I rotated my chest sideways, curved my spine, threaded one arm beneath the pipe, placed my head through the triangular space beside it, and pulled the rest of my body around. If anyone had seen the position, they would have called an exorcist and a building inspector. I found the cat hiding behind insulation. The cat looked at me. I looked at the cat. The cat hissed. I could not blame it. From its perspective, a full-grown man had just poured himself around a pipe like cursed yogurt. I held out my hand. The cat climbed onto my chest. Then I had a problem. Getting in had required flattening my chest and twisting my shoulders. Getting out while carrying an angry 6-kilogram cat required inventing a completely new branch of logistics. At that moment, dignity left my body faster than a situationship when rent was due, and it did not even take its toothbrush. I tucked the cat against my stomach, crossed my arms around it, and used my legs to move backward. At the pipe, I had to rotate underneath while keeping the cat level. The cat responded by placing one paw directly on my mouth. I am not saying that animal understood humiliation. I am saying the timing was suspicious. When I emerged, covered in dust with the cat sitting on my chest like a tiny landlord collecting rent, the child started laughing and crying at the same time. That moment felt better than winning the limbo contest. Then the cat scratched my chin and immediately ruined the emotional atmosphere. Ungrateful little bastard. The rescue clip was filmed only after the child and his parent agreed, and it spread even faster than the challenge videos. Suddenly people stopped seeing me only as a weird internet guy. I began receiving requests from fire departments, rescue teams, plumbers, building managers, animal shelters, and one dentist who had absolutely misunderstood what I did. I did not become some serious rescue hero. Most calls were too dangerous or required trained professionals, and Victor made sure I understood that being bendy did not make me fireproof, bulletproof, or immune to stupidity. But occasionally there was a problem where a narrow space really was the only issue, and when professionals were present, I could help. On day 91, I crawled behind industrial shelving to reach a shutoff valve after a pipe burst in a bakery. On day 93, I squeezed beneath a stuck theater platform to release a jammed mechanism. On day 95, I reached through a tiny drainage opening to recover a wedding ring, although that one involved 30 minutes of sludge and made me reconsider every choice that had led me there. The bride hugged me. I smiled. Then I spent an hour washing my arm while whispering that love was not worth sewer juice. My ability kept growing. By day 98, I could fold one arm flat along the opposite side of my torso. I could bring my knees beside my shoulders while lying down. I could rotate my hips far enough to walk forward while my upper body faced almost backward. That last trick caused problems in public. I tried it once on a sidewalk. An old man saw me walking toward him while looking the other direction and dropped an entire bag of oranges. I helped pick them up. He asked what was wrong with me. I told him the list was getting long. On day 100, Mina decided we needed a special video. 100 days of 1% flexibility sounded simple, but the actual result no longer looked simple at all. We built an obstacle course in Victor's studio using everything we had learned: ropes, bars, narrow frames, boxes, rotating rings, a fake ventilation shaft, a tunnel made from clear plastic, a chair because Mina still found the furniture incident funny. The goal was to complete the entire course without stopping. My ass was technically facing one direction while the rest of me had already moved on emotionally. Victor designed it to force constant transitions. I could not just bend deeply once. I had to move from one impossible position into another while maintaining control. The first section tied my wrists to my ankles. I escaped without untying the rope. The second section required moving through 3 openings smaller than my shoulder width. I rotated through them one side at a time. The third forced me beneath a bar only 20 centimeters above the floor. I turned sideways, shifted my shoulder blades, exhaled, and slid under. Then came the clear tunnel. It curved sharply to the left and became narrower near the center. I entered headfirst. At the bend, there was not enough room to turn normally, so I folded my neck sideways, curved my upper spine, brought one knee toward my chest, and slowly changed orientation while still inside the tube. Mina later paused the footage at that exact moment. My face was upside down. One foot was beside my ear. My elbow appeared to be negotiating with my pelvis. She said the screenshot looked like a man getting evicted from his own skeleton. The internet agreed. The final obstacle was a transparent acrylic box, 40 centimeters long, 30 centimeters wide, 30 centimeters tall. Victor had originally intended me to put only my upper body inside. I stared at the box. Then I stared at him. He told me not to do whatever expression I was currently thinking. I asked him to open the lid. He refused. Mina opened it. This is why she was both my best friend and a public health concern. I placed one foot inside, then the other. I crouched. My knees rose past my shoulders. My spine rounded. I rotated one hip higher than the other, slipped one arm beneath my thighs, wrapped the other around my head, and slowly lowered my torso into the box. There should not have been enough volume. There definitely should not have been enough dignity, but I fit. Every part of me was inside except 3 fingers. I adjusted my shoulder. The fingers disappeared. Mina closed the lid. Victor walked away. I could see him in the distance questioning the life decisions that had brought him into contact with me. Inside the box, I felt no pain, no numbness, no weakness. I could breathe. I was compressed into a shape that would make an orthopedic surgeon throw their laptop into the ocean, and I felt like I was sitting on a crowded bus. Then the blue message appeared again. It floated in the tiny space directly in front of my eyes. 100 days complete. Second adaptation threshold reached. A new line appeared beneath it. Compression tolerance unlocked. I had just enough room to whisper one sentence. This was about to get extremely stupid. Compression tolerance sounded terrifying until the message explained what it actually meant. My body was not becoming soft like jelly. My bones were not turning rubbery. I could not get crushed by a truck and bounce back like a cartoon. I looked like someone tried to fold a stripper pole into human form and got bored halfway through. It meant that when I deliberately folded, twisted, or compressed myself, the tissues involved could shift and tolerate pressure without losing function. My breathing adapted. My circulation adapted. My muscles maintained force even in absurdly shortened positions. Basically, the system had looked at everything I had done for 100 days and decided I was not disrespecting anatomy hard enough. I climbed out of the acrylic box and immediately tested the difference. Victor told me to stop immediately. Mina told me to continue immediately. I compromised by doing something stupid while Victor supervised. We had a padded gap between 2 training walls that could be adjusted by centimeters. Before the threshold, my narrowest controlled squeeze was around 12 centimeters if I went slowly and aligned everything perfectly. We set the gap to 11. I turned sideways. My shoulders compressed slightly as I rotated them. My rib cage shifted. My hips angled. I slid through. 10 centimeters. I passed. 9. I passed again. At 8 centimeters, I expected to stop. Instead, I felt my torso subtly reorganize under pressure. Not breaking, not collapsing, just shifting around the limit. I moved through inch by inch. Mina stared at the wall, then at me, then back at the wall. She said I had become a human browser cookie and could apparently fit through any stupid gap the internet offered me. Victor asked what that even meant. Mina said it meant he was old. He threw a towel at her. I celebrated my new ability by discovering its most important application: airplane seats. 2 weeks later, the 3 of us were invited to a variety festival in Osaka. The flight was short, but the man in front of me reclined his seat the moment we reached cruising altitude. Normally this would have crushed my knees. Instead, I folded both legs sideways, tucked my knees near my ribs, rotated my hips, and sat comfortably in a space designed by someone who clearly hated femurs. Mina looked over and said airlines would assassinate me if I taught everyone how to stop paying for extra legroom. I told her I was finally using my gift for social justice. Victor asked us both to shut up. At the festival, I discovered that internet fame had escaped my phone and entered the physical world. There was a line of people waiting to meet me. Some wanted photos. Some wanted to know whether my power was real. One teenager handed me a rubber noodle and asked me to sign it. That was the moment I understood my legacy. Not heroism, not athletics, noodle merchandise. The festival organizers had built a special challenge called the Human Packing Problem. The name alone should have made me leave. The stage contained a series of transparent containers, each smaller than the last. trust. Contestants could choose how far they wanted to go. Nobody was forced into anything dangerous, and every box had a quick-release side. Most performers stopped at large crates. Victor fit inside a 60-centimeter cube and received a standing ovation. If this was character customization, somebody had unlocked the "what the hell is that" slider and dragged it until the menu started smoking. Then I stepped up. The organizers brought out a 50-centimeter cube. Easy. 45. Still easy. 40. I had done smaller. Then they brought out a rectangular case roughly the size of a large microwave. The audience started chanting my nickname. I hated that it worked on me. I opened the case, sat inside, folded my ankles behind my shoulders, rotated my hips, tucked my head beside one knee, crossed my arms through the remaining spaces, and compressed downward. The lid closed. Applause exploded. Then Mina, standing beside the stage, held up a lunchbox. I could see the evil in her eyes from 30 meters away. I told her no. She raised it higher. The audience laughed. Victor physically took the lunchbox away from her. For once, professionalism defeated content. Barely. After the show, an executive from a Japanese escape room company approached us. His company had built a traveling attraction called the 7 Locks Hotel, a 7-stage escape experience where every room used a different physical puzzle. No danger. No real confinement. Just elaborate mechanisms, hidden passages, timed doors, and puzzles. He wanted me and Victor to attempt it together on camera. Victor accepted before I could answer. He had apparently developed a competitive disease. The 7 Locks Hotel looked like an old European mansion from outside, except it had been built inside a convention hall. The first room required solving a mechanical puzzle to open a door. Victor started studying symbols on the walls. I noticed a narrow serving hatch beside the door. He told me not to. I put my head through it. The hatch was too small for my shoulders, so I turned one shoulder forward, compressed the other, slid my chest through, then rotated my hips and climbed into the next room. The game master stared through the observation window. The official time for room 1 was supposed to be 15 minutes. I cleared it in 40 seconds without touching the puzzle. Victor called me a disgrace to escape rooms. I reminded him the word escape was literally in the name. Room 2 had a locked gate with bars too close together for a person. I went between them. Room 3 had a crawl space blocked by a zigzag tunnel. I folded around the turns. Room 4 finally stopped me. There was no gap, no hatch, no bars, just 4 solid walls and a puzzle involving a clock, 6 paintings, and a row of books. I stared at it like a dog encountering algebra. Victor solved it in 3 minutes. He bowed so dramatically I considered leaving him there. Room 5 involved a vertical shaft with grips placed at awkward angles. I could reach around corners and climb without repositioning my feet, so I cleared it first. Room 6 required us to cross a grid of pressure sensors. There were safe spots, but they were too far apart to reach normally. Victor used a balance technique to move across slowly. I stretched into a ridiculous split between 2 safe pads, rotated my upper body, reached a third pad with my hand, and moved like a spider that had recently discovered Pilates. My body was serving divorce slinky energy, which is not a phrase humanity needed but absolutely deserved. At one point I had both feet on opposite walls, one hand on the ceiling, and my other elbow somehow supporting my weight against a corner. The game master muttered something through the speaker that translated roughly to, "This is bullshit." That became the title of the video. Room 7 was supposed to be the grand finale. We entered a fake hotel vault. The door closed behind us. A countdown began. The normal solution required finding 4 codes hidden throughout the room, opening 4 lockboxes, assembling a key, then unlocking the vault door. Victor immediately began searching. I looked at the circular emergency air duct near the ceiling. It was 10 centimeters wide. Too small, probably. I climbed onto a shelf and examined it. The duct itself was rigid, but the opening behind the grill widened slightly after 20 centimeters. I could get an arm inside, maybe my head if I angled carefully. Victor saw my expression. He said my name in the exact tone teachers use when a student is holding fireworks. I promised I was only checking. That was a lie. The grill was designed to pop out from inside for maintenance. I reached through, curved my wrist around, pressed the latch, and removed it. Then I tested the opening with my shoulders. 9.5 centimeters at the narrowest point. I had passed 8 centimeters in training. The difference was that this opening was circular. I turned sideways, raised one arm, folded the other behind my back, compressed one shoulder downward, angled my head, and started moving through. My skull did not magically shrink. Instead, I discovered I could tilt and rotate in a way that let the narrowest profile of my head pass first. My ears folded flat. My jaw shifted slightly. Everything stayed protected. Victor watched in horrified fascination. Halfway through, I paused. The audience watching the live feed probably thought I was stuck. I was not stuck. I had realized something much worse. My pants had caught on a screw. There are few situations more humbling than being halfway inside an air duct with your ass hanging out while a professional escape artist tries to unhook your waistband. Victor fixed it, but not before Mina took 17 photos. She later called the sequence the ass before freedom. I considered ending our business partnership. Then I remembered she handled taxes. I continued through the duct, reached the maintenance corridor, and opened the vault from outside. We finished the 7-room attraction in 11 minutes. The previous record was 48. The company did not change the puzzles. They changed the rules. A new line appeared on the website the next week. Participants must use intended routes. Victor sent me a screenshot with no comment. I framed it. By day 112, I had become famous enough that random companies were designing things specifically to stop me. A lock company created an advertisement showing a thief shaped suspiciously like me being defeated by a reinforced vent cover. I was one bad camera angle away from looking like a demon's rejected dating profile thirst trap. A luggage company posted a joke saying its suitcases were Joon resistant. A restaurant added a sign to its kitchen door that read, "No customers, delivery drivers, or noodle men beyond this point." I had become a building code. Then a startup called Boxfort contacted me. Their entire business was modular secure storage. They made lockers, cabinets, mobile safes, and high-end storage rooms. Their founder, Daniel Seo, wanted to challenge me personally. He claimed his newest locker system was impossible to escape if a person was placed inside. I told him locking people in lockers sounded like a terrible business model. He explained it was a publicity stunt. Mina explained that the publicity stunt paid $30,000. I asked where the locker was. The event took place in a showroom packed with cameras. The locker was not a school locker. It was a steel storage unit about the size of a phone booth, with reinforced seams and a door secured by multiple external bolts. There were ventilation holes, but each was only 4 centimeters across. There were no panels I could unscrew from inside. The floor was solid. The ceiling was solid. Daniel proudly told me he had studied every public video of my escapes. He had specifically eliminated gaps I could exploit. I stepped inside. The door closed. For the first time in months, I looked around and saw no obvious physical route. I could touch every wall. I could bend in any direction I wanted. It did not matter. Flexibility cannot pass through solid steel. The clock kept running. 5 minutes. 10. Mina called through the intercom to ask whether I had died of embarrassment. I told her I was thinking. Then I noticed something. The ventilation holes were tiny, but air still had to come from somewhere. The inner wall had a thin perforated panel covering a channel between 2 steel layers. The panel itself was riveted. I could not remove the rivets, but I could reach one finger through a ventilation hole and feel the gap behind it. I pushed farther. The hole was 4 centimeters wide, too small for my hand, but my fingers could fold together more tightly than before. I compressed my knuckles, rotated my thumb, and slowly worked my hand through. It hurt exactly 0. That was still deeply creepy. My wrist followed. Then part of my forearm. I could not get my elbow through, but I did not need to. I bent my wrist inside the wall channel and reached upward. My arm curved around the internal corner. I felt wiring. I felt a metal rod. Then I found the emergency mechanical release cable. Daniel had included it for safety, but it was supposed to be accessible only from a service panel on the outside. I hooked it with 2 fingers and pulled. The door popped open. 17 minutes. The showroom erupted. Daniel stared at the open door with the expression of a man watching $30,000 become a live stream donation. My hips were doing community service for crimes my spine had not confessed to, and neither of them had a lawyer. He paid immediately. Then he asked if he could hire me as a consultant. I agreed. For the next month, I became the worst thing that had ever happened to storage designers. They would build a prototype. I would crawl through something. They would reinforce it. I would reach around something. They would seal that. I would find another route. One engineer started calling me the flexible audit. Another kept a whiteboard titled, "How did this asshole get in?" I signed it. It was the proudest thing I had ever autographed. The work paid well enough that I moved into a better apartment. Not a huge one, just a place with sunlight, a decent kitchen, and cabinets large enough that Mina made me promise not to sleep inside them. I agreed. Then I discovered the closet shelf. Technically not a cabinet. She found me there on day 121. She threw a sock at my face and called me a domestic cryptid. I told her rent was expensive and I was using all available square footage. Around the same time, Victor began preparing for an international escape artist exhibition. He asked me to perform a joint routine with him. I almost refused because I did not want to turn his craft into a joke. Victor surprised me by saying that was exactly why he wanted me there. He had spent his career showing what trained human movement could accomplish. I was showing something different, What happened when the limits themselves kept moving? So we created an act based on contrast. Victor escaped restraints using skill. I escaped them using anatomical nonsense. He slipped elegant knots. I moved my shoulders to places shoulders should not visit. He climbed from a suspended jacket with perfect control. I folded in half while hanging upside down and pulled my own feet through the sleeve holes. The audience loved it. At the finale, both of us were placed inside separate transparent cylinders with our wrists and ankles secured. Victor freed himself first. I did not free myself at all. I kept the restraints on. Instead, I brought my knees against my chest, rotated my bound arms around them, compressed my shoulders, and slid my entire tied-up body through the emergency opening at the bottom of the cylinder. The opening was roughly the width of a dinner plate. When I came out still tied, Victor stared at me and said the act was supposed to demonstrate escape. I told him I had escaped the container. He asked about the ropes. I said the ropes had done nothing wrong. That line became a meme. Then, on day 130, I woke up with my left foot resting beside my pillow. That sounds like a medical emergency. It was not. I had apparently rolled over in my sleep, bent one knee upward, rotated my hip, and casually placed my foot beside my own head. I had slept like that for hours. No numbness, no pain. This was the kind of bullshit that makes a physical therapist delete LinkedIn and open a bakery. No stiffness. I stared at my foot. My foot stared back spiritually. Then I noticed something else. My right arm was underneath my torso, not pinned beneath it. Underneath it in a way that should have been impossible. My shoulder had rotated so far inward that my arm lay flat across the opposite side of my back. I pulled it free easily. That was the morning I stopped measuring my ability by normal stretches. Toe touches were meaningless now. Splits were meaningless. Back bends were warm-ups. I needed a new test. So Victor built what he called the geometry wall. It was a large vertical panel filled with cutouts of different shapes and sizes. Circles, squares, triangles, narrow curves, twisting channels. Some openings were straightforward. Others required a sequence of rotations. The goal was simple: get from one side to the other without climbing over the wall. On day 132, I cleared 12 openings. On day 135, 15. On day 138, 18. Every morning, another shape became possible. One opening looked like a lightning bolt only 20 centimeters wide at its largest point. I had to enter with one arm, rotate my shoulder downward, bring my head through sideways, fold my chest around the first corner, reverse my hips, bend both knees in opposite directions, then corkscrew through the second corner. Mina watched me emerge and said I looked like toothpaste being squeezed through the signature of a drunk doctor. I hated how accurate that was. Then day 140 arrived. I stepped up to the geometry wall and saw the one opening Victor had insisted was impossible. A long horizontal slit. 7 centimeters high, 70 centimeters wide. No curves, no widening, just a straight narrow slot through a padded wall. I had tried it every day since the threshold. My head always stopped me. That morning I placed my hands through first. Then I turned my head. I angled my jaw. I folded one ear. I shifted my neck. Slowly my face entered the slit. Victor stopped talking. Mina lowered her phone for the first time in recorded history. My cheek compressed against the padding. My skull did not shrink, but the angle changed enough. I rotated a fraction more. My head passed through, then my shoulders, then my chest. I flattened my abdomen, angled my hips, and slid the rest of the way. I emerged on the other side standing upright. For several seconds, nobody said anything. Then Mina looked at the 7-centimeter opening, looked at me, and said I had officially become a receipt. I laughed. Victor did not. He walked around the wall, measured the slit again, and stared at me with an expression I had never seen from him before. Not fear, not jealousy, concern. He asked how much further this could go. I looked at the blue number floating in the corner of my vision. Another 1% tomorrow. Then another. Then another. I had no answer. I looked like a human charging cable after 3 years at the bottom of a teenager's backpack. Twisted, spiritually sticky, and somehow still working. That night, for the first time, I wondered whether the ridiculous part of my life had only just started. Victor's concern lasted until breakfast. Then Mina sent us a sponsorship proposal from a noodle company offering $50,000 for me to appear in an advertisement called Become the Noodle. Concern lost. Rent won. I wish I could say I protected my artistic dignity. 3 days later, I was wearing a white tracksuit while a camera crew filmed me folding through a giant foam bowl as animated broth effects were added around my body. The director asked me to move more noodle-like. I asked what that meant. He said, Less man, more noodle. I nodded like this was a sentence professionals said every day. Then I bent backward, hooked one ankle around my shoulder, rotated under my own leg, and rolled across the set in a continuous twisting motion. The director stood up slowly. He whispered that it was perfect. I realized advertising had become a place where nobody could stop me. The commercial went viral before it even aired because one crew member posted a behind-the-scenes clip of me accidentally getting tangled in the fake garnish. For 20 seconds, I fought an enormous plastic green onion while folded into a circle. Mina called it the most honest representation of my career. By day 145, I could pass the geometry wall's 7-centimeter slit reliably. I could also fit through openings that were wider but shaped far worse. My body had become exceptionally good at moving one section at a time. Head first, one shoulder, chest turned, ribs angled, hip rotated, everything passed sequentially instead of demanding enough space at once. Victor described it as reducing cross-sectional commitment. Mina described it as Joon becoming downloadable. Her phrase was worse, so naturally the internet used it. Then an invitation arrived from the Seoul Festival of Impossible Skills. The name sounded fake. It was not. Once a year, performers from across the country gathered for 3 days of strange competitions: speed stacking, blindfold juggling, extreme balance, memory games, foot archery, competitive cup catching. One man could spin 5 umbrellas on different parts of his body while solving arithmetic. I had never felt more at home. The organizers created an entire event around me called the Narrow Path Trial. I objected to having a custom event. Then I saw the prize was a compact electric car. I developed principles later. The course began with ordinary obstacles and became increasingly absurd. A tunnel, a twisting pipe-shaped corridor, a wall of rings, a field of vertical bars, then a transparent maze where each chamber could be crossed only through a differently shaped opening. There were other flexible performers too, not people with my ability, just extremely trained contortionists and acrobats. I recognized some from Victor's community. I worried they would resent me. Instead, most of them treated me like a bizarre natural disaster they wanted to study. One woman named Sora Kim spent 10 minutes asking whether my shoulders ever dislocated. My skeleton was basically catfishing physics, and physics had already sent nudes. I told her no. She asked whether I felt stretching pain. I told her no. She stared at me in silence, then called me a cheating bastard with the warmest smile I had ever seen. I liked her immediately. The event started fast. Sora led through the early obstacles because technique mattered more than raw range. She moved with perfect control. I moved like a grocery bag caught in wind. At the vertical bars, we were even. At the twisting corridor, I pulled ahead. Then we reached an opening shaped like a crescent moon, barely wide enough for one shoulder at a time. Sora stopped. I did not. I pushed one arm through, rotated my head sideways, turned my torso until one shoulder sat almost beneath the other, and threaded myself around the curve. I emerged on the other side. A commentator yelled that I had gone through the wall like a debt collector from another dimension. I respect good commentary. The final obstacle was a transparent spiral tube that narrowed toward the end. The normal strategy was to crawl until the tube became too small, then exit through one of several side openings. The farther you traveled, the more points you earned. Sora reached the third smallest opening. The crowd went wild. Then I entered. The tube curved downward. I crawled normally at first. When it narrowed, I rotated onto my side. When it narrowed again, I brought one arm overhead and one behind me. When it became too short for crawling, I stopped using my knees and pulled with my toes while pushing with my fingers. The tunnel continued shrinking. The final side opening was already behind me. The organizers had assumed nobody would go farther. I looked ahead. The tube ended in a maintenance cap. There was no intended exit. I should have backed up. Instead, I saw a tiny circular cleaning port in the cap. Victor, watching from outside, immediately shook his head. Mina immediately nodded. My moral compass had 2 people and both were broken differently. The cleaning port was 6 centimeters across. My head could not pass through a 6-centimeter circle. Not yet, but my hand could. I reached through, curved my wrist around the outer latch, and opened the maintenance cap. The entire end swung away. I crawled out of the tube and crossed the finished platform. The crowd exploded. The event director stared at the open maintenance cap like I had just discovered a legal loophole in gravity. Technically, I had not broken a rule. Technically became my favorite word. I won the car. Then I discovered a new problem. I barely knew how to drive. Mina took the keys away before I could become flexible roadkill. The festival would have ended perfectly if not for the golden chopstick incident. The golden chopstick was exactly what it sounded like, a ridiculous trophy shaped like a giant gold-plated chopstick, awarded each year to the festival's Best Food Performance Act. It was not solid gold, but it was valuable enough to insure and stupid enough to steal. If my ancestors could see me, they would have climbed back into the afterlife and changed the family password. On the final morning, it vanished from a locked display room. Security footage showed no one entering through the door. The window was sealed. The only opening was an air return near the ceiling, 8 centimeters high. The security manager looked at the vent. Then every employee slowly looked at me. I was standing there holding a breakfast sandwich. I actually checked whether there was a hidden camera because the timing was too perfect. Within an hour, someone leaked the story online. The headline did not accuse me directly, but it might as well have said, "Local noodle-shaped idiot uniquely qualified for suspicious bullshit." I was not arrested. Security had footage of me at another event during the likely time of the theft. But the internet does not care about schedules when a meme has momentum. People started posting edits of me crawling through bank vaults, jewelry stores, and refrigerators. One image showed me emerging from a toilet with the caption, "Hide your assets." I had to admit that one was funny. The festival director asked me to help prove how the theft had happened. I had no detective experience. Victor pointed out I had also once had no escape experience, yet that had not prevented me from disrespecting several $1 million of security hardware. So we examined the display room. The vent opening looked possible for me, but barely. I climbed up and tested it. My head passed. My shoulders passed. The duct behind it narrowed at a 90-degree bend. I folded around the turn. Then I stopped. There was dust everywhere. Thick dust. The duct had not been cleaned in years. If someone had crawled through recently, there should have been a trail. There was none. I backed out looking like a powdered donut that had seen combat. Mina laughed until she noticed my expression. The vent was a distraction. Someone wanted the theft to look impossible. I examined the display case. No broken glass. No damaged lock. Victor noticed that the base of the case was slightly misaligned with the floor markings. We checked photos from the previous day. It had moved, only a few centimeters. The case sat on a raised platform used for temporary event displays. Beneath the platform was a shallow utility space for cables, too shallow for a person. Everyone looked at me again. I told them to stop doing that. The gap beneath the platform was 12 centimeters. I could fit, but the dusty vent had taught me something. I slid under carefully and looked around. Cable bundles crossed the space. There were wheel tracks in the dust leading toward a neighboring booth. The display case had been rolled slightly. The trophy had been lowered through a removable panel in the platform. Then the case had been rolled back. Nobody needed to crawl through anything. They only needed access beneath the display before the room was closed. I followed the wheel tracks through the cable space. They ended under the booth next door. I was folded so indecently the room needed parental controls and a suspicious browser history warning. The booth belonged to a magician named Felix Yang who sold novelty puzzle boxes. This looked terrible for Felix. It looked even worse when we found the golden chopstick inside one of his giant demonstration boxes. Felix immediately denied stealing it. I believed him, not because I had evidence, because he looked less guilty than confused, and because the box containing the trophy had been sitting in plain view all morning. A real thief would not hide stolen property in the one giant box labeled with his own name unless they had recently received a concussion. We checked camera footage from the booth. Felix had been away for dinner when someone wheeled a covered equipment cart behind his display. The person wore an event staff jacket and kept their face hidden. Mina zoomed in. The cart had one distinctive feature. A sticker shaped like a dumpling. I remembered seeing the same sticker on a catering cart backstage. We went to the catering area. Most carts were identical. One had a clean rectangular patch where a sticker had recently been removed. The catering supervisor stared at it. Then he stared at an employee named Taeho, who immediately began sweating so aggressively I could almost hear the moisture. Taeho ran. I have to respect commitment to a bad decision. He sprinted through the loading area, knocked over 2 empty boxes, and dove under a partially closed rolling door. Normal people would have waited for the door to rise. I was no longer normal people. I dropped sideways and slid beneath the door while it was still only 14 centimeters above the floor. I emerged on the other side without slowing much. Taeho looked back, saw me coming through the gap like a demonic parking receipt, and screamed. He changed direction. He ran between stacked equipment crates through a narrow path. I took the shorter route through the crates, not around them, through them. There were small gaps between the wheeled cases. I turned my shoulders, compressed sideways, slipped through one gap, ducked beneath a support bar, folded around another case, and popped out in front of him. He stopped so suddenly his shoes squeaked. I did not tackle him. I am flexible, not a police officer. I simply stood there until security caught up. Taeho confessed almost immediately. He had not wanted the trophy for money. He was furious because his dumpling stacking performance had lost the previous year to a noodle-pulling act. He planned to hide the trophy, cause a scandal, then discover it later and become famous. Instead, he accidentally framed a magician and an anatomical error. When the festival director asked why he chose Felix's booth, Taeho said puzzle boxes looked suspicious. Felix looked personally offended on behalf of puzzle boxes everywhere. The story went viral harder than the theft itself. My name was cleared. Felix gained 50,000 followers. Taeho became known online as the Dumpling Bandit, and the Golden Chopstick received its own security guard for the rest of the festival. My joints had more red flags than a dating app bio that says entrepreneur and owns 3 decorative swords. Mina looked at all of this and said society had reached peak civilization. I told her society had left the building hours ago. After the festival, I expected life to calm down. Instead, the Golden Chopstick incident created an entirely new category of invitation. People wanted me to test impossible routes, not break into places, not steal things. Just solve physical puzzles that assumed human bodies had standard limitations. Escape attractions contacted us. Game shows contacted us. Architects contacted us. One children's museum asked me to demonstrate how animal skeletons move differently, which I declined because I did not want 6-year-olds going home and trying to rotate their shoulders backward. A circus offered me a contract. I declined that too. Victor said I could have made excellent money. I told him I already spent enough time being compared to an invertebrate. Day 156 brought a much more appealing invitation. A famous amusement park called Dream Harbor was opening a new attraction called the Impossible House. The house was a giant interactive maze where rooms changed shape, walls moved, floors tilted, doors shrank, furniture transformed. It was designed to make adults crawl, climb, twist, and solve spatial puzzles. The park wanted me to attempt a secret route built specifically for my ability. Mina saw the contract and nearly ate the paper. The fee was huge. More importantly, the park agreed to let us film everything. When we arrived, the attraction designer, a cheerful woman named Yeri Lim, gave me a helmet and said she had spent 3 months studying my videos. That sentence had become my personal warning siren. The first room looked ordinary. Then the exit door began shrinking vertically. I ran. The opening dropped from 2 meters to 1 meter, then 70 centimeters, then 40. I dove, rotated sideways, tucked one shoulder, and passed through at 20 centimeters. The second room filled with padded columns that moved closer together, creating an ever-changing maze of gaps. I had to choose routes in real time. A normal gap closed. I turned sideways. Another narrowed. I rotated my hips. At one point, 2 columns left only 9 centimeters between them. I passed through while laughing because I had forgotten what sane amusement looked like. The third room had rotating walls with slots that aligned for only seconds. I learned quickly that I did not need full alignment. I could enter one slot, pause inside the wall thickness, bend around the moving edge, then exit through another opening. Yeri watched from the control room and screamed with joy every time I broke her intended solution. Finally, someone understood me. The fourth room was called the Folded Library. Shelves moved together until the paths became narrow. Books slid out to create obstacles. The floor tilted. I climbed between shelves using my elbows and feet at angles that looked obscene enough to get demonetized by anatomy itself. At one point, my left leg was above my head, my right arm was behind my back, and my face was pressed between 2 fake encyclopedias titled Personal Development. At this point, a workplace inspector would not have fined me. They would have simply blocked my number and gone home. The irony nearly killed me. The fifth room was the final challenge. A large circular chamber with no visible exit. Yeri's voice came through the speaker. She said there was one route. I had 10 minutes. I searched the walls. Nothing. The floor. Nothing. The ceiling had decorative stars and a central light fixture. Then I noticed the furniture. A couch, a table, 2 chairs, and a cabinet were bolted to the floor. The cabinet had a narrow decorative gap behind it. I squeezed my hand through. There was empty space. I moved the cabinet door. It did not open. Then I realized the whole cabinet was not storage. It was the entrance. The gap behind it was 8 centimeters wide and curved around the wall. I turned sideways and entered. The route became narrower after 1 meter. Then it curved upward. I had to rotate from sideways to nearly upside down while still inside. I continued. The tunnel widened slightly around a corner, then suddenly ended at a tiny opening in the ceiling of the next room. I pushed through headfirst and dropped onto a padded mat. The timer read 3 minutes and 19 seconds. Yeri ran into the room and hugged me so hard I almost felt normal compression for once. She told me the secret route would never be open to the public because no reasonable person should attempt it. I told her reasonable people were overrated. Then the blue message appeared. Day 160 complete. Third adaptation threshold approaching. Not reached. Approaching. That was new. A second line appeared. Condition. Demonstrate full body continuous flexibility under dynamic load. I stared at the words. The system had never given me a condition before. For 160 days I had received the increase automatically. Now something had changed. Mina saw my expression and asked what was wrong. I told her. Victor listened quietly. Then Yeri, who had no idea what we were talking about, asked whether dynamic load meant she could put me on the rotating floor. I should have said no. Instead, 10 minutes later, I was standing in another test room on a platform that tilted, spun, and shifted while padded bars moved around it. The challenge was ridiculous. I had to keep moving through narrow openings while the floor changed underneath me. I bent under one bar, rotated around another, dropped into a split as the platform tilted, caught myself with one arm behind my back, folded sideways through a moving frame. Then the floor rotated 45 degrees and I nearly slid into a wall. I caught a rail with my foot. My leg curved upward behind me while the rest of my body continued moving forward. The next frame approached. I could not let go, so I bent around it while still anchored by the foot. My entire body formed a twisting loop under load. Every muscle stayed strong. Every joint stayed stable. The blue screen flashed. Condition complete. Third adaptation threshold reached. I had somehow turned my ribcage into a slutty accordion with excellent core strength. I landed on the mat. A new line appeared. Continuous chain flexibility unlocked. I had absolutely no idea what that meant. Then I tried to stand up. My body rolled from the floor to my feet without any single joint straightening first. It was one continuous wave from ankle to neck. Mina's mouth fell open. Victor slowly sat down. Yeri whispered, "Do it again." And somewhere deep inside me, the remaining scraps of common sense packed a suitcase and left. Continuous chain flexibility turned out to be exactly as strange as it sounded. Before, I could make impossible shapes by moving individual joints into impossible positions. I would rotate a shoulder, bend my spine, shift my hips, then adjust my knees. Now those movements could flow into each other without a hard transition. My body moved like one connected wave. If I bent at the ankle, the motion could travel through my knee, hip, spine, shoulder, elbow, wrist, and fingers in sequence. I could redirect force through my whole body instead of stopping it at one joint. Victor explained this using careful technical language. Mina explained it by saying, "You have unlocked Premium Worm." Guess which description became the video title. The first practical effect was balance. Normally, if I leaned too far, I had to step or fall. Now I could send the imbalance somewhere else. My ankle bent, then my knee, then my hip, then my torso, until my center of mass returned over my foot through a shape that looked completely unreasonable. Victor pushed my shoulder while I stood on one leg. I bent sideways. He pushed harder. My torso curved. My raised leg swung behind me. My arm wrapped around my waist, and somehow I stayed upright. He stopped pushing. I unwound back to normal. Mina said I looked like a phone charger cable refusing to fall off a desk. I tried walking while keeping my head perfectly still. My entire body rippled underneath it. The footage was horrifying. My face stayed level while my shoulders, ribs, hips, and knees flowed from side to side. It looked like my skeleton had been replaced by a group chat with no moderation. I watched the replay once and told Mina to delete it. She uploaded it instead. 30 million views. That was our relationship in one sentence. On day 164, Victor introduced a rolling drill. The goal was to go from standing to the floor and back up smoothly without using my hands. A trained acrobat might roll over a shoulder. I discovered I could lower my head behind one knee, curve my torso, roll across my side, let the curve travel through my hips, and return to standing without any obvious moment of falling. It looked less like a roll, and more like someone had dropped a ribbon made of meat. I hated that sentence as soon as Mina said it. She repeated it into the camera. Of course she did. By day 170, I could travel across the floor using nothing but continuous body waves. My body was giving premium cable management, except the cable had an ass, taxes, and increasingly bad judgment. No crawling, no normal steps, just bending, rolling, and transferring pressure. This was not faster than running. It was significantly more upsetting. Victor set up cones and challenged me to move through them without letting my hands or knees touch the ground. I curved between them on my feet and shoulders, passed under bars, rolled sideways, then rose through my own legs like I had been assembled incorrectly. A delivery driver entered the studio halfway through. He saw me coming toward him backward with my face space between my knees. He set the package down and left without asking for a signature. I respect a man who knows when paperwork no longer matters. The new movement style also made my escapes much faster. Instead of stopping to reposition after each tight section, I could flow through openings continuously. Victor tied me in a complicated set of ropes and told me not to use my hands. I started rotating from the ankles upward. The twist traveled through my legs and hips. My torso turned inside the rope loops. My shoulders followed. I redirected pressure until the ropes slid from one position to another. Then I folded forward, passed my arms beneath my feet, continued the wave through my spine, and stepped out. 20 seconds. Victor stared at the empty ropes. I stared at him. He asked whether I understood how insulting that was. I said yes. He said good. Then he tied me up again. He was having fun now. The biggest surprise came when I tripped. It happened in the least dramatic possible place, a convenience store. I stepped backward, caught my heel on a basket, and lost balance while holding 2 drinks and a bag of chips. Normally, I would have fallen. Instead, my body folded around the momentum. My knees bent. My hips dropped. My spine curved backward. One shoulder rolled. I rotated under myself and somehow ended up standing 3 feet away. The drinks never left my hands. The chips survived. The cashier stared at me. I stared at the basket. Then a teenager near the freezer whispered, "That was some demon-ass recovery." I could not disagree. I started training controlled falls with professionals because the ability clearly changed how I handled momentum. I was still vulnerable to impact. I was not invincible. But if I had room to move, I could redirect force through a much longer chain of motion. A fall that might normally stop at the wrist could travel through the arm, shoulder, back, hip, and legs. The result looked ridiculous. I jumped from a padded platform only 1 meter high and landed on 1 foot. Instead of absorbing the impact with a normal squat, my entire body curved downward in sequence. My knee bent beside my shoulder. My torso spiraled. One hand touched the mat behind me. Then the motion reversed and I returned upright. Mina replayed it in slow motion and said my bones were laundering kinetic energy. Victor said that was not how physics worked. The pose looked like 2 horny question marks had tried to fight inside a laundry dryer. Mina said physics needed better accountants. By day 178, our channel had become one of the biggest physical comedy channels in the country. That sentence still sounded fake to me. I had started as an office editor who could not touch his toes. Now I paid my rent by entering objects incorrectly. My parents finally visited the studio around this time. I had avoided showing them the most extreme tricks because I knew exactly how my mother would react. She watched 3 videos in silence. Then she looked at me and asked whether I was eating enough vegetables. This is the power of mothers. Your son can pass through a 7-centimeter slot and the spinach question survives. My father was more curious. He asked whether I could fit under their couch without moving it. My mother yelled at him. 10 minutes later, both of them were timing me. The couch clearance was 9 centimeters. I turned sideways, placed one arm forward, compressed through the shoulder, and flowed beneath the frame in a continuous wave. Halfway under, I found 17 years of lost objects. Coins, a key, 2 pens, a marble, 1 dried piece of cereal that may have been older than my career. I emerged holding everything like an archaeological discovery. My father took the coins. My mother made me clean the floor. Superpowers do not outrank family hierarchy. The next major event came from a sports variety program called Borrow My Skill. The format paired experts with people from other disciplines and forced them to attempt simplified versions of each other's skills. They invited me alongside a breakdancer, a rock climber, a martial arts tricking athlete, and a competitive pole dancer. I warned the producers that flexibility did not mean I could automatically perform anyone else's skill. They said failure was funnier. I respected the honesty. The first challenge was breakdancing. I was terrible. My body could reach every position, but rhythm had apparently been excluded from the system. I attempted a freeze, bent too far, and ended up with 1 foot resting on my own shoulder while my forehead touched the floor. The breakdancer stared at me and said that was not the move. I told him I had noticed. The second challenge was climbing. That went much better. The route had holds placed far apart and around corners. Normal climbers needed dynamic moves or careful positioning. I could keep 3 points of contact while reaching absurd distances around my own body. I placed my left foot on a hold, rotated my hip outward, curved my torso around the wall, reached behind myself with my right hand, and grabbed a hold that should have required turning completely around. The climbing coach looked offended by my geometry. At one overhang, I wrapped one leg around a support and hung nearly upside down while my upper body curved back toward the wall. I still needed grip strength, but my strength had never decreased. I climbed the beginner route faster than expected. My dignity had been folded smaller than my body, which was saying some nasty shit by this point. Then I got stuck at the top because I had threaded my own arm through my legs without noticing. The coach had to tell me which limb to move first. Nothing destroys supernatural mystique like being told, "Sir, please remove your elbow from behind your knee." The pole challenge was even worse for my dignity. I could hold bizarre shapes easily, but I had no idea how to transition gracefully. At one point, I wrapped around the pole with both legs, curved my back, rotated my shoulder, and accidentally spun upside down with my face inches from the floor. The instructor asked if I was okay. I said yes. Mina shouted from behind the camera that I looked like a drunk scarf at a strip club. "There are sentences your mother should never hear about you." Unfortunately, my mother watched the episode live. She texted me a single disappointed emoji. I considered moving countries. The tricking athlete gave me the hardest challenge, a simple aerial rotation. I had the range of motion, but timing and spatial awareness mattered. My first attempt became an uncontrolled flexible tumble, where my legs passed around my torso, and I landed sitting backward with one foot under my chin. The studio went silent. I held up one thumb. The host fell over laughing. After several tries, I learned how to use my continuous flexibility to control rotation. Instead of keeping a rigid shape in the air, I could alter my body mid-spin dramatically. I tucked one side, extended another, curved my spine, and changed rotational speed in ways that looked fake on replay. That became useful sooner than expected. On day 184, Dream Harbor invited us back for a promotional stunt on a new giant inflatable obstacle course. Nothing dangerous, just enormous bouncing platforms, rotating padded arms, tunnels, slides, and ridiculous foam structures. I was racing Sora and several athletes when a rotating arm caught my legs unexpectedly. It lifted me sideways. For a second, I was airborne. I had no stable landing position. My body reacted. I bent around the rotation. One leg folded toward my chest. My spine curved. My shoulders turned. The motion traveled through me like a whip made of poor decisions. Instead of landing flat, I touched the inflatable surface with one foot, then one hand, then my shoulder, then rolled through the remaining momentum and came upright. I had not planned any of it. The crowd screamed. I screamed half a second later because my brain finally received the memo. Sora crossed the finish line, walked back, and asked whether I had just dodged an injury by becoming punctuation. I said yes. She said she hated me. Then she asked me to teach her the landing. I could not. That was becoming a pattern. My ability gave me movements that normal people could not safely copy, and I needed to be careful about how we presented them. Mina began adding clear warnings to every video. Victor refused to let viewers submit challenges involving dangerous machinery, heights, traffic, or other obvious stupidity. I moved with the graceful elegance of a drunk noodle escaping a strip club through the bathroom vent. Our brand became absurd but controlled, mostly. Then a man named Leo Vance arrived and ruined the controlled part. Leo was a stunt performer from Canada known online for extreme parkour and escape challenges. He had the confidence of a man who had never been slapped by a consequence he could not monetize. He contacted us with a proposal, a head-to-head challenge inside an abandoned shopping mall that had been converted into a legal stunt course. No crime, no trespassing. The whole building belonged to the production company. They had created routes through stores, ventilation replicas, maintenance corridors, escalators, foam pits, narrow passages, and movable walls. Leo wanted to race me from the roof access level to the central atrium. His advantage was speed and parkour. Mine was being a structural engineer's sleep paralysis demon. The prize was $100,000 donated to charities chosen by the winner. I accepted. Leo arrived with 6 cameras and enough energy to power a district. He was friendly, which disappointed Mina because she had already prepared 3 rivalry thumbnails. The race started on the 5th floor. Leo sprinted immediately. I sprinted too, because despite all my strange abilities, straight hallways still favored legs. He jumped a counter. I went under it. He vaulted a railing onto a padded lower platform. I descended through the bars. He took a stairwell. I found a maintenance opening connecting 2 levels and slid through. We kept trading the lead. At a fake clothing store, the route was blocked by movable display walls. Leo climbed over. I went through a 20-centimeter decorative gap near the floor. At a cinema set, he jumped rows of seats. I flowed beneath them without standing up. At a restaurant set, he slid across a counter. I passed through the service hatch. The announcers were losing their minds. Then we reached the 3rd floor where the production team had built a narrow obstacle tunnel specifically for me. Leo had to detour around it. I entered head first. The tunnel twisted vertically, then horizontally, then narrowed to 9 centimeters before widening again. I should have gained 30 seconds. Instead, halfway through, I heard a strange mechanical click. The wall behind me shifted. Not part of the challenge. A movable set panel had failed and partially blocked the tunnel exit. I stopped. Production stopped the race immediately. Nobody was in danger, but the exit had narrowed unexpectedly. Crew members started moving to release the panel. I told them I was fine. Then I looked at the remaining space. 6.5 centimeters at the widest point. My best straight slit was 7. 3 weeks earlier, I would have had no chance, but I had gained more flexibility every day since then. I turned my head, compressed one cheek against the padding, shifted my jaw, angled my neck. My face entered. The gap pressed around my head. No pain. I rotated gradually. The continuous flexibility let the motion travel down through my shoulders as my head moved. One shoulder compressed, then the other. My chest followed in a twisting wave. Somewhere in the universe, God probably looked at my skeleton and muttered, "I did not approve this shit." I slid through the 6.5 centimeter opening. When I emerged, the entire production crew was silent. Then Leo, waiting nearby because the race had been paused, said, "My guy just got born through a wall." I collapsed laughing. The race restarted after the set was checked. Leo won by 4 seconds. I did not care. We split the charity donation anyway because neither of us wanted the comments section turning philanthropy into sports tribalism. But the 6.5 centimeter squeeze became the biggest clip of my career. Experts made videos analyzing it. Doctors made videos refusing to analyze it. Animators compared my movement to liquids, snakes, cables, and animated noodles. One chiropractor posted a reaction video where he watched 5 seconds, removed his headset, and walked out of frame. That was my favorite. Then, on day 190, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a simple metal ring. The inner diameter was 6 centimeters. There was also a note. No threat, no demand. Just one sentence. "When this becomes easy, call me." Underneath was a phone number. Mina thought it was a marketing stunt. Victor thought it was creepy. I thought both could be true. I tried the ring around my hand. Easy. My wrist. Easy. My forearm stopped it. Obviously, my head was nowhere close. I put the ring on a shelf in the studio. For the next 20 days, I ignored it. Mostly. Every few mornings, I picked it up and tested my hand, wrist, arm, foot, and ankle. Each time, it traveled slightly farther. On day 197, it passed my elbow after I rotated the joint. On day 202, I got it over one shoulder. On day 206, I could move it diagonally across my upper torso by compressing and shifting one section at a time. Mina stopped joking about the package. Victor watched every test carefully. Then day 210 arrived. I stood alone in the studio before sunrise. The metal ring rested in my hands. 6 centimeters. I had not yet tried the one thing the sender obviously meant. I raised it to my face, turned my head sideways, folded one ear, shifted my jaw, compressed my cheek. The ring moved past my forehead, then my eyes, then my nose. I rotated. It passed my mouth, my chin. My head went completely through. I stood there with a 6 centimeter metal ring around my neck. No pain, no injury, no explanation. The blue message appeared. Day 210. 4th adaptation threshold available. Condition unknown. At the same moment, my phone rang. I had never called the number from the note. I looked at the screen. Unknown caller. For some reason, that was the first time since this whole thing began that I did not laugh. I answered the phone. A woman asked whether the ring fit. I looked down at the metal circle resting around my neck. I asked who she was. I was anatomically posting thirst traps without my consent, and the comment section was somehow winning. She introduced herself as Dr. Hana Seo, a biomechanics researcher and, unfortunately for my sense of mystery, Daniel Seo's older sister, the storage locker guy. I had spent 20 days imagining secret organizations, underground laboratories, or some shadowy flexible cult. Instead, I had been mailed experimental jewelry by the sister of a man whose lockers I bullied for money. That was somehow more believable. Hana explained that Daniel had shown her my test footage months earlier. She had studied human movement, adaptive tissue mechanics, and extreme joint mobility for years. My body did not match any known condition she had ever seen. I told her I could have saved her a lot of reading by saying, "Yeah, it's weird. She did not laugh. I liked her immediately. She wanted to run non-invasive movement tests. No needles, no surgery, no secret basement. I made her say the last part twice. Her university lab had proper equipment for measuring force, angles, pressure, and motion. More importantly, she had noticed something in my public videos that Victor and I had missed. My flexibility was not increasing evenly. It was increasing functionally. I asked what that meant. She told me to come to the lab. Mina insisted on coming. Victor insisted on coming because he did not trust Mina around science. Mina said that was discriminatory against visionaries. Victor said she once microwaved foil. She said that was one time. I rode to the lab between them like a child trapped in a divorce involving content creators. Hana's lab was less dramatic than I expected. White walls, motion capture cameras, force plates, adjustable frames, medical-looking equipment I had no interest in touching. Hana herself wore sneakers and carried 3 tablets at once. She looked at the 6-centimeter ring around my neck, nodded, and immediately asked whether I could remove it. I had not considered that. Putting the ring over my head had been possible because I could see what I was doing. Taking it off backward required repeating the process without a mirror. I tried. The ring reached my jaw and stopped. I rotated. Stopped again. Mina began laughing. Hana silently handed me a mirror. 10 minutes later, I finally got the ring off. This was an important lesson in superhuman ability management. Never put your head through mysterious metal objects before checking the exit strategy. Hana's first test measured maximum voluntary force in different positions. She had me pull a handle normally, then with my shoulder rotated behind me, then with my arm wrapped across my chest, then while folded sideways. My output stayed nearly identical. That should not happen. Normally, muscles have positions where they produce less useful force. Mine still had small variations, but far less than expected. The system was not just making me flexible, it was preserving function throughout the new range. Next, she measured joint motion. That became a problem because the software kept rejecting my data as tracking errors. I rotated my shoulder. Error. I bent my spine. Error. My spine had ghosted linearity so hard it deserved its own terrible relationship podcast. I shifted my hip. Error. After the 7th rejected capture, Hana stared at the computer and muttered, "Stop gaslighting me." The machine did not respond. Mina immediately clipped the audio. Hana's second observation was stranger. When I moved through extremely narrow openings, my body did not just compress where pressure was applied. Nearby structures adjusted before pressure reached them. My system appeared to anticipate the shape I was trying to make. Hana placed soft sensors across my torso, then asked me to pass between 2 padded panels. As I approached the narrow gap, the pressure data changed before I touched the walls. My muscles reorganized tension in advance. My ribs subtly changed angle. My shoulders shifted. My abdomen tightened differently. It was like my body knew the target geometry and prepared a route. That explained why I could perform movements I had never practiced. I was not consciously controlling every tiny adjustment. The system was doing some of the work. I told Hana that sounded convenient. She said it was scientifically horrifying. Mina asked whether that could go on a shirt. Hana finally laughed. The third test revealed what she meant by functional growth. She compared old videos from day 30, day 70, day 100, day 140, and day 200. If my flexibility simply increased by a fixed percentage of normal range, we should have seen predictable changes. We did not. The improvement appeared wherever a movement had a limiting structure. Once one limit stopped mattering, the next one adapted. First joint angle, then tissue compression, then coordinated motion. The ability was not asking how far can this joint bend. It was asking what stops Joon from making this shape. Then it gradually removed the answer. That was much more unsettling. It was also extremely cool. I am capable of holding both emotions at once. Hana built a series of tests to determine my current limits. A curved tunnel 6 centimeters high, a spiral frame, a padded cylinder with adjustable diameter, a flexible lattice with irregular openings. I spent the afternoon entering equipment in ways the manufacturers definitely did not intend. At one point, I was halfway through the lattice with my knee beside my cheek and my right arm emerging from behind my left hip. A graduate assistant entered the room, saw me, apologized, and left. I heard him ask Hana outside whether the lab had an ethics committee. She said yes. He asked whether the ethics committee knew about me. She said not in this configuration. I laughed so hard I got stuck for 30 seconds. That was when Hana discovered the next limit. My body could compress and bend dramatically, but I still relied on existing articulation patterns. I could shift ribs, rotate vertebrae, and move joints far beyond normal ranges, yet some sections of my body still behaved as larger units. For example, my forearm could curve through wrist and elbow positioning, but the middle of the forearm itself remained mostly straight. I looked like a cursed IKEA instruction had become horny, self-aware, and legally allowed to vote. My thigh remained a segment between hip and knee. My lower leg remained a segment. My skull remained, thankfully, skull-shaped. Hana believed the fourth threshold might change that first part, not the skull. I made her promise, not the skull. The system's condition remained unknown, so we experimented. Strength under flexion, speed under flexion, rotation under load, multiple simultaneous curves. Nothing triggered it. Then Mina suggested the stupidest possible test, a knot. She asked whether I could tie myself into an actual overhand knot. Victor said absolutely not. Hana said that was mechanically impossible. I said those were two excellent reasons to attempt a safe padded version. We started with a simple loop. I stood with my feet wide, bent forward, passed my upper body between my legs, curved around my right thigh, then brought my head and shoulders back toward the front. That created something vaguely knot-like, but my rigid limb segments prevented a true crossing. I tried again from the floor. I curled one leg around my torso, passed an arm beneath it, rotated my shoulders, and attempted to thread my upper body through the loop formed by my hips and thigh. I got close, very close. Then my forearm blocked the path, not the elbow, the middle of the forearm itself. It needed to curve. I pushed gently. Nothing. The system message appeared. Fourth adaptation threshold condition identified. I froze. Everyone leaned closer. The next line appeared. Create a closed body loop without external support. Mina pointed at me and shouted that she had solved science with a knot. Hana looked devastated. Victor laughed for almost a minute. We spent the next week trying to create a closed loop. I could make circles with my arms, obviously. That did not count. I could touch hands to feet. Did not count. The system apparently wanted my whole body arranged so that one continuous path of my torso and limbs enclosed open space while I supported myself, whatever that meant. We tried bridges, arches, extreme backbends, shoulder stands, and increasingly cursed configurations that made the motion capture model look like modern art. On day 217, I almost succeeded by bending backward until my hands reached my ankles from behind, then lifting one leg and threading it across my shoulders. The system rejected it. On day 220, I created a ring shape lying on my side. Rejected. On day 223, I balanced on one foot, brought the other leg over my shoulder, bent backward, passed my arms around my torso, and nearly connected everything. I fell onto a mat. Mina said I had looked like a pretzel having a panic attack. I told her to demonstrate a better one. She touched her toes, complained about her hamstrings, and withdrew from the competition. Then Sora visited the lab. She watched my failed attempts for 20 minutes before pointing out that I was thinking like a person with a front and a back. I asked what other kind of person there was. My left leg was basically in a toxic relationship with my right shoulder, and both refused couples counseling. She said me. Fair. She suggested using my hip rotation to reverse my lower body, while my torso curved around the opposite direction. I tried it. I planted my feet, turned my hips almost backward, bent my knees, curved my spine sideways. One arm passed between my legs, the other wrapped over my shoulder. Then I continued the curve until my upper body came around toward my own hip. There was a gap, about 15 centimeters. I could not close it. Day 224 gave me 1 more %. The gap became smaller. Day 225, smaller again. On day 226, my fingers reached my ankle. The moment they connected, I shifted my weight off the supporting frame. My entire body formed a twisted standing loop. No external support. The blue message flashed. Condition complete. Fourth adaptation threshold reached. Segmental flexibility unlocked. I did not feel anything dramatic. No flash of light. No surge of power. I simply unfolded and stood normally. Hana asked me to bend my forearm. I held my arm straight in front of me. Normally the line from wrist to elbow would stay straight. I focused on curving it. The muscles tightened. The bones did not bend like rubber. Instead, tiny shifts distributed along the entire segment, so subtle individually that no single point looked broken or unstable. The overall forearm curved. Not much. Maybe a few degrees, but it curved. Everyone became silent. I looked at my arm, then at Hana, then at Victor. Mina whispered, "Bro unlocked boneless mode." Hana said that was medically offensive. Mina said accuracy had never stopped her before. The effect was small on the first day, but the daily increases now had somewhere new to go. By day 230, my forearm could form a visible arc. My upper arm could curve slightly too. My thighs and lower legs gained subtle distributed motion. My torso became almost unfair. Every section of my spine, ribs, shoulders, and pelvis could participate in a curve rather than forcing sharp changes at specific points. I could wrap my upper body around a large exercise ball while keeping my muscles engaged. I could curve along a padded pole. I could lie on the floor and make my entire body follow an S shape from fingers to toes. This did not make me floppy. That was the crucial difference. I could still hold every shape with strength. Hana hung a force sensor from my curved arm and had me pull. The arm stayed curved while producing nearly normal force. She stared at the result and said nothing for 10 seconds. Then she walked to a whiteboard and wrote, "Why?" underlined it twice. I suggested adding a question mark. She added 4. The ability made climbing ridiculous. At Victor's studio, I wrapped one leg partially around a padded vertical pole and supported my weight without needing a tight knee hook. My leg curved around the surface while staying strong. The shape was so obscene I expected the camera to ask for age verification before focusing. Then I added an arm, then my torso. Within a week, I could cling to the pole using broad curves across my body. Mina took one look and said I was giving the pole a full-body restraining order violation. I told her that sentence had to die in the room. It got 3 million likes. Day 235 brought another brand challenge, this time from a camping company. They made compact tents and sleeping bags. Their marketing team asked whether I could sleep comfortably in the smallest tent they sold. The tent was designed for one person. It was small, but not ridiculous. I fit easily. Then they brought out a child's play tent as a joke. I fit in that too. Then one employee pointed at a storage bag used to carry the folded tent. The bag was long but extremely narrow. Everyone laughed. I did not. I had learned never to laugh at containers before testing them. The bag was 25 centimeters in diameter and about 1 meter long. A normal adult could not enter it. I sat down, placed both feet inside, curved my legs around each other, rotated my hips, folded my torso forward, and slowly slid downward. My segmental flexibility let my limbs follow the cylindrical shape instead of stacking awkwardly. My shoulders curved inward, my torso curled, my head tucked between my knees. I fit up to my chin. The crew lost their minds. I adjusted one arm. My head lowered. The bag came up over my hair. I was entirely inside. Someone loosely pulled the drawstring until only an air gap remained. I heard Mina outside ask whether the sponsorship included shipping. I shouted no from inside the bag. Victor asked whether I was comfortable. I said surprisingly yes. Then someone put a shipping label sticker on the outside as a joke. Mina read it aloud. Contents: one dumbass. Handle with disappointment. I laughed so hard the bag rolled off the padded platform. I landed on the mat still inside and continued rolling across the studio like the world's worst burrito. The ad campaign sold out the tent. It also created a new internet challenge called Can Joon Fit? People sent photos of harmless spaces and asked whether I could enter them. A large dog crate, a cabinet, a decorative barrel, a giant ceramic vase, a hollow movie prop shaped like a robot. We chose safe examples and filmed a compilation. I fit inside nearly all of them. The vase defeated me because its neck was too narrow. For now, I hated that my brain automatically added those words. By day 240, I could bend along curves that no longer resembled a human skeleton at all. I could lie flat, curl my entire body into a spiral, and bring my feet around until they rested beside my shoulders. I could wrap around a padded cylinder twice with my limbs interwoven. I could form a full ring by bending backward until my feet came over my shoulders and touched the floor in front of my hands. I had become the human version of a browser tab you cannot close because some shady site keeps opening porn pop-ups. I could travel through winding spaces without sharp repositioning because every segment contributed. Then Hannah showed me a test object she had built. It was a clear acrylic tube shaped like a corkscrew. Inner diameter, 12 centimeters. 3 complete turns. No removable panels. 1 entrance. 1 exit. Victor looked at it and laughed. Mina looked at it and said it resembled a giant transparent intestine. Hana looked offended. I looked at it and felt excitement. I entered head first. The first curve forced my head sideways. The second required my shoulders to follow the spiral. The tube turned continuously. There was no place to straighten. Old me would have stopped immediately. Day 100 me might have made the first turn. Day 240 me simply followed the shape. My neck curved. My shoulders curved. My torso wrapped into the spiral. My hips followed. My legs bent along the same path. I moved through the tube like a living cable. When my head emerged from the other end, Mina was already laughing. She said I looked like the world's most upsetting soft-serve machine. I kept moving until the rest of me came out. Hana checked the data. No dangerous pressure. No strength loss. No instability. I had become capable of conforming to a 3-dimensional curve while remaining fully functional. That was impressive. It was also the exact moment Victor made a mistake. He looked at the spiral tube and casually said, "I wonder how many turns you could handle." Mina's head rotated toward him. My head rotated toward him. Hana slowly closed her eyes. Victor realized what he had done. 3 days later, our studio contained a 12-meter transparent tube shaped like an enormous coil. I was about to attempt the stupidest sponsored livestream of my career. The 12-meter coil was sponsored by a company that manufactured transparent industrial tubing. I still do not know why they had a marketing budget for me. Maybe somewhere in a conference room, a serious executive had pointed at my face and said, "This man will sell tubes." Business is beautiful. The tube was 30 centimeters wide at the entrance, then gradually narrowed to 10 centimeters near the final turns. It looped around a metal frame like a giant spring. The entire structure rested over padded flooring, and every section could be opened by staff if I needed to stop. Hana checked the design. Victor checked the emergency releases. Mina checked the camera angles. I checked whether the sponsor had paid the deposit. We all contributed according to our values. The livestream began with 200,000 viewers. I entered the tube. The first turn was easy. I crawled on hands and knees. The second narrowed enough that I shifted onto my side. By the third, crawling was impossible. I raised one arm overhead and let my body curve around the coil. Every section followed the tube. My shoulders bent into the arc. My torso spiraled. My hips rotated. My legs curved behind me. I moved forward using tiny contractions from my hands, feet, and the sides of my body. My posture said ancient curse, but my face said please Venmo me, because rent remained the strongest force in my universe. The viewers passed 500,000. At turn 5, the tube narrowed again. I exhaled, compressed, and continued. At turn 7, I could no longer see the entrance or exit. Transparent walls surrounded me in every direction, and my entire body was arranged in a corkscrew. I felt weirdly peaceful. Then Mina's voice came through the speaker asking whether I had become emotionally attached to the pipe. Peace ended. I told her to focus on production. She told me the comment section was calling me sewer boyfriend. I nearly reversed out on principle. At turn 9, the diameter reached 12 centimeters. I had already passed narrower gaps, but never while following such a long curve. My body needed to maintain compression across multiple sections at once. I slowed down. One shoulder curved inward. My ribs shifted. My hip followed the spiral. I pulled. My movement became smoother. The continuous chain adaptation and segmental flexibility worked together. Instead of forcing myself around each turn, I became the turn. I reached the final section, 10 centimeters, then 9. The sponsor had not told me there was a 9-centimeter final collar. Hana immediately asked whether I wanted it opened. I tested the pressure. Fine. I moved forward. My head rotated through. My shoulders compressed. My torso followed. Then my upper body emerged from the exit, while the rest of me remained, wound through 3 loops of tubing. That created an unexpected visual. My face was out. My arms were out. My hips were still somewhere behind me in a plastic spiral. Mina walked over and asked how it felt to have my ass in another postal code. I told her I was going to fire her. She reminded me she owned 40% of the company. Capitalism defeated me again. I continued until my entire body slid free. The live stream peaked at 1.8 million viewers. The tube company sold limited edition transparent water bottles with my signature on them. I received one for free. It leaked. That felt personal. After the coil challenge, my career moved into a strange new category where producers no longer asked whether I could perform a task. They asked what object they should build around me. A game show made a rotating wall with constantly changing gaps. A science museum created a temporary exhibit comparing animal movement to human movement and invited me as the incorrect human. A dance crew asked me to appear in one music video as a moving sculpture. I spent 7 hours behind a singer folding into shapes while wearing silver body paint. The final video showed me for 4 seconds. My mother texted that I should have worn a sweater. On day 248, a luxury watch brand asked me to pose for photographs. I assumed they wanted the watch on my wrist. They wanted me arranged around a giant clock face. The photographer kept saying words like elegance, fluidity, and timeless form. I was upside down with my left knee behind my neck and my right arm curved through my legs. My pelvis was doing parkour inside my own damn torso while my dignity waited outside with the coats. There was nothing timeless about my left butt cheek cramping under studio lights. Even Supernatural Adaptation has opinions about 6-hour photo shoots. The campaign looked beautiful though. I looked like a human calligraphy stroke. For the first time, people commented on the shapes as art instead of only horror. That gave Victor an idea. He wanted to create a performance that was not an escape or challenge, just movement. I resisted because I had no dance background. He said that was not the point. Sora joined us. She understood line, balance, and controlled transitions. Victor understood presentation and suspense. I understood how to accidentally frighten stagehands. We spent 2 weeks building a 5-minute routine. It began with me standing perfectly normal. Then one wrist bent. The movement traveled up my arm. My shoulder followed. My spine curved. My hips rotated. Slowly, the human outline disappeared. I became a spiral, then a loop, then a narrow folded shape. Then I unwound into something almost normal before reversing direction again. Sora moved around me with ordinary but beautiful flexibility, which made my body look even more impossible by contrast. Victor used ropes as visual lines rather than restraints. I moved through them, around them, under them, sometimes carrying tension while folded. We performed it at a theater festival. The audience was quiet until the end. That scared me more than any obstacle course. Then they stood up. For one glorious minute, I felt like a serious artist. Backstage, Mina showed me a comment saying my final pose looked like a shrimp receiving divine judgment. The serious art minute ended. I saved the comment anyway. Day 255 marked another weird milestone. I could finally fit my head through the neck of the giant ceramic vase that had defeated me earlier. We had kept the vase in the studio because Mina said it gave the room character. I said it gave the room an enemy. The opening was just under 6 centimeters at its narrowest inner point, but it widened immediately below the lip. I angled my face, shifted my jaw, compressed my cheek, and rotated through. My head entered the vase. I stopped there. That was enough. Then I realized I could not see how to reverse the exact angle. Again, for the second time in my life, I had placed my head through something before confirming the exit. Victor found me sitting on the floor with a giant vase around my neck. He did not help immediately. He took a photo. I felt betrayed. Mina had corrupted him. Hana arrived 20 minutes later and guided me out using a mirror and pressure sensors. The vase survived. My dignity did not. The photo became our highest selling poster. It was titled Think Before Entering. I hated everyone. Around day 260, Hana called me back to the lab for a new measurement series. She had spent weeks analyzing the threshold data and believed she had another clue. The system did not reward passive flexibility. The scene had less dignity than a drunk bachelor party trapped overnight in a yoga studio. It rewarded useful flexibility. The adaptations appeared when I repeatedly encountered new movement constraints. The daily increase happened regardless, but thresholds seemed to unlock when my body demonstrated a new category of coordinated control. That meant the 4th threshold had not happened because I reached some number. It happened because I formed the closed body loop. The system wanted proof that I could use everything already unlocked. I asked why. Hana pointed at the whiteboard where why Ma was still written from the previous month. Science remained undefeated by honesty. Then she showed me another strange result. My muscle strength was still stable, but my leverage options had increased so much that some tasks felt easier even without stronger muscles. For example, I could brace against 3 surfaces at once in a narrow space. I could pull from angles where normal people could not position themselves. I could distribute force across my body instead of relying on one limb. We tested it with a padded frame. I entered a box-shaped structure and pressed outward against the walls. One foot touched the floor. One knee touched a side. My back curved against another wall. One arm wrapped around a support. I became stable in a position no normal person would choose voluntarily. Hana gradually increased an external pulling force attached to the frame. I held position far longer than expected. Mina said I had become human, expanding foam. Hana told her to stop naming scientific phenomena. I suggested we put that on another shirt. The next invitation arrived while I was still in the lab. It came from an international exhibition in Singapore called the Unusual Human Mechanics Showcase. Despite the dramatic name, it was basically a festival for elite performers with rare physical skills. Contortionists, hand balancers, strongmen, freerunners, dancers, escape artists, precision athletes, people who could manipulate objects with their feet, people with incredible breath control. People whose careers made mine seem almost normal for several seconds at a time. Victor had attended before. Sora had performed there once. This year they wanted me as the closing guest. I accepted. The showcase was enormous. The venue had 3 stages and an exhibition hall full of training equipment, motion analysis, costumes, props, and performers stretching in ways that would have terrified me 1 year earlier. For once, I was surrounded by people who did not immediately ask whether I had bones. They waited at least 5 minutes. I met a hand balancer who could walk downstairs on one arm, a foot archer who could shoot targets backward while upside down, a dancer who could isolate sections of her spine so precisely that my system almost seemed rude for giving me shortcuts. Then I met a man named Emil Navarro. Emil was not a contortionist. He was a balance performer. He could stand on narrow rails, moving boards, rolling cylinders, and suspended platforms with absurd control. During a rehearsal, I watched him stand on a slowly rotating beam while juggling 3 balls. My body was moving like a sexed diagram had been possessed by TikTok comments and given caffeine. The beam tilted. He adjusted before it moved. That caught my attention. The reaction looked familiar. Not the skill itself, the timing. My body sometimes adjusted before pressure reached me, as though it anticipated the shape I intended. Emil's balance seemed to anticipate movement before the platform changed. I asked how long he had trained. He said 15 years. Normal answer. Then I asked whether his balance had ever changed suddenly. He looked at me for half a second too long. Then he laughed and changed the subject. I noticed. So did Hana, who happened to be standing nearby. We did not push. This was a performance festival, not an interrogation. But later that night, I found a small wooden disc outside my hotel room door. On it was handwritten text, 1%, nothing else. I called Hana immediately. She came to my room with Victor and Mina. Mina looked at the disc and said maybe I had joined a cult by accident. Victor said that would require a cult willing to handle the paperwork. I checked the hallway camera with hotel staff. A person wearing a cap had left the disc. Their face was hidden from the angle. No threat. No attempt to enter, just the message. I slept badly. The next day, Emil acted normal, too normal. I did not accuse him because I had no proof. Then the showcase finale began. The closing event was called the Cross Skill Gauntlet. It was not a serious competition. Performers rotated through stations designed to favor different abilities. Balance beam, rope maze, climbing wall, moving platforms, narrow frames, object control challenge. I was excellent at the narrow frames and hilariously bad at juggling. At one station, I attempted to keep 3 rings in the air while my body folded beneath a moving bar. I dropped all 3 rings directly onto my own head. A child in the audience laughed so violently I heard it from the stage. I bowed to him. Emil dominated the moving platforms. Sora destroyed the balance and flexibility section. Victor escaped a rope maze before I had even figured out which rope was decorative. Then we reached the final team challenge. 4 performers had to cross a large rotating structure without touching the floor. Platforms shifted, beams turned, padded walls opened and closed. I was paired with Emil, Sora, and Victor. Halfway through, one platform rotated unexpectedly faster than planned. Not dangerous. The safety system caught it, but the sudden movement separated us. Sora reached a stable rail. Victor caught a rope. I curved around a padded support. Emil landed on a beam that tilted sharply beneath him. I watched his body adjust. Before the beam reached the new angle, before it should have been possible to react, his ankle shifted, his hip moved, his torso corrected. He stayed perfectly balanced. Then he looked directly at me. For the first time, his friendly expression disappeared. He tapped one finger against his chest, then held up one finger, 1%. I nearly missed my next grip. If shame had bones, mine had already bent them backward and charged admission. The audience thought it was part of the show. We finished the course together. Backstage, I went looking for Emil. He was gone. His equipment was gone. His performer badge had been left on a table. Underneath it was another wooden disc. This one had a phone number. Mina stared at it. Victor stared at me. Hana looked more excited than worried, which was somehow the most worrying reaction. I asked what she thought it meant. She said there might be someone else whose body changed by a fixed percentage over time. Maybe balance. Maybe something related. Maybe completely different. I looked at the disc. Then my phone. I could call immediately. Instead, I put the disc in my pocket. I had a performance in 20 minutes. Mysteries could wait. I had promised 3,000 people I would crawl through a rotating sculpture shaped like a question mark. Priorities. The sculpture was 9 meters long and narrowed through 6 curves. I entered to applause. Halfway through, the audience could see my entire body winding through transparent sections like a living cable. I reached the last curve. The opening narrowed to 5.5 centimeters. A month earlier, impossible. Now I barely slowed. My head angled, my shoulders compressed, my torso flowed. I emerged from the tiny opening and unfolded upright in one continuous motion. The audience stood. The blue message appeared in front of me. Day 270. 5th adaptation threshold approaching. Condition hidden. Then another line appeared. Warning, future flexibility may exceed conventional body topology. I had to finish the performance while pretending I had not just read the phrase, exceed conventional body topology. I smiled at the audience. I bowed. Then I walked backstage and asked Hana what topology meant in this context. She stared at me for a long time. Finally, she said, "I was hoping you wouldn't ask." That was not the answer I wanted. Hana explained topology using a coffee mug and a donut. This did not help. She said topology was about properties that remained even when shapes were stretched or bent. A mug handle made a loop. A donut had a hole. You could deform either object, but certain relationships stayed the same unless you cut, connect, or pass something through something else. I looked at my own body. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 torso. Several openings created by limbs when I folded them. I asked whether the system intended to turn me into a donut. Hana said no. Mina said I had been spiritually donut-shaped for months. Victor confiscated the coffee mug before the conversation became worse. We did not know what the warning meant, and the 5th threshold condition remained hidden. So I returned home and did the healthiest possible thing. I ignored it and filmed a commercial for socks. The sock company had seen how often my feet appeared near my head and decided this made me an ideal spokesperson. I spent one afternoon holding my own foot beside my face while a photographer captured close-ups of the product. The geometry was so nasty even a thirst trap would have filed a restraining order. At one point, the creative director asked me to smile more naturally. My left ankle was wrapped behind my neck like a scarf. There was nothing natural available. The campaign slogan became, "Anywhere your feet go." Mina wanted to change it to, "Unfortunately everywhere." The company declined. Chords. I kept the wooden disc from Emil in my desk. I wanted to call him, but part of me hesitated. My power had always belonged to my weird little life. Even when Hana studied it, even when millions watched it, I was still the only person living with the daily number. If Emil really had something similar, the world became larger, maybe more complicated. I had gotten comfortable being one impossible idiot. I was not sure how I felt about a group project, so instead of calling him, I accepted another challenge. This one came from Kwan Entertainment, a company that built giant televised obstacle events. Its founder Hyun Kwan was a former game show producer with the energy of a billionaire child given access to construction permits. He had been following my career for months. He wanted to build a full course around one question. Could a structure be designed specifically to stop me without simply becoming a solid box? He called the project Zero Clearance. The name was dramatic. The budget was obscene. The contract included enough money to fund our studio for years. I read the amount twice and told Mina we had found our dignity's market price. She said she had known it was lower. Hyun's rules were simple. The course had to contain a continuous physical path from start to finish. I could not break, unscrew, damage, or remove course components. I could not climb over exterior walls. I could not use tools. I could move through any opening my body could safely pass. The designers had access to all my public measurements and selected lab data I agreed to share. They knew my narrowest gaps, my curvature, my compression, my strength, my movement speed. They spent 6 weeks building a monster. When I arrived at the filming location, I laughed out loud. Zero Clearance looked like a warehouse-sized machine had swallowed an escape room and developed anxiety. Transparent tunnels crossed overhead, walls rotated, rings moved on tracks, narrow slots opened and closed. Curved channels spiraled through platforms. There were sections that looked like giant puzzles, sections that looked like ventilation systems from a spaceship, and one area that resembled a dishwasher designed by Satan. Hyun stood in front of it wearing a bright yellow jacket and smiling like he had personally declared war on my shoulders. He gave me 2 hours. If I reached the final platform, I won. If I got stuck, stopped, or used an unintended external route, the course won. I asked what the course received if it won. Hyun said pride. I said pride could not pay taxes. He respected that. The clock started. The first section was called the compression hall. Two transparent walls formed a corridor that narrowed gradually. At first I walked normally. I had the silhouette of a demon trying to hide a boner in church, and no amount of sponsorship money could make that elegant. Then sideways. Then with shoulders rotated. At 12 centimeters I raised one arm and compressed. At 9 I turned my head and continued. At 7 the walls began curving. That was the trick. The narrowest section was not straight. It bent left, then right, forcing me to change orientation while compressed. I used continuous chain movement to send a turn through my body. Head angled left, shoulder followed, ribs curved, hip rotated. Then the opposite direction. I passed. 5 minutes. The second section was the ring forest. Dozens of metal rings hung at different angles, each one smaller than the last. I had to move through them in sequence without touching the surrounding floor. The early rings were easy. Then they began overlapping. I passed through one ring while already partially inside another. My left arm threaded through the first. My head entered the second. My right leg curved around the outside. My torso twisted between them. At one point I had 3 rings around different sections of my body. Mina shouted from the commentary platform that I looked like a keychain possessed by a horny demon. There are jokes that should not be broadcast internationally. That one was translated into 6 languages before the show ended. I kept moving. The final ring was 5 centimeters wide, smaller than the 6 centimeter ring that had once challenged me. I had gained more than 60 days since then. I placed my fingers through. Hand, wrist, forearm, elbow, shoulder, then my head. The hardest part was my face. I rotated slowly, letting pressure distribute across the cheek, jaw, ear, and neck. The ring passed. My torso followed one section at a time. I stepped out. The designers looked unhappy. Hyun looked delighted. The third section was called Reverse Hall. Every opening was positioned so the easiest route required entering backward. I could not see where I was going. That slowed me down. Victor had anticipated this. For weeks he had trained me to navigate tight spaces by touch. I entered feet first. My toes felt the first corner. I curved one leg around it. My hips followed. I rotated my torso while my head remained near the entrance. Then I fed myself backward through a twisting route, using feet, elbows, shoulders, and pressure against padded walls. I had become my own delivery package. Mina said the only thing missing was a "this side up" sticker. I told her I no longer had a side up. That shut her up for almost 4 seconds. The fourth section was dynamic. Panels slid while I moved through them. I had to time openings and maintain flexibility under motion. I passed through a vertical slit, dropped into a curved tunnel, reversed orientation, slid beneath a moving bar, then wrapped around a rotating padded column without touching the floor. My body flowed continuously. Every daily increase mattered now. Day 50 Joon would have stared at this place and called the fire department. Day 100 Joon might have survived the first haul. My skeleton had officially entered its Ho era, and apparently there was no unsubscribe button. Day 200 Joon could have reached the rings. Day 283 Joon was becoming a personal insult to the entire design team. Then I reached section 5, the Mobius cage. Hyuna had named it that even though Hana later complained it was not mathematically a true Mobius structure. Hyun said television had never been improved by accurate topology. The cage consisted of 2 interwoven transparent channels. The route crossed over and under itself repeatedly. Openings forced my limbs through loops formed by other sections of my body. I entered normally. Then the route narrowed. I passed one arm through a ring-shaped opening while my torso curved around the outside. Next, I had to bring one leg through the space formed between that arm and my chest. I managed. Then my upper body needed to pass through a loop formed by my bent leg and the wall. I twisted, compressed, moved through. The course kept forcing me to thread myself through my own shapes. At first it was just complicated, then it became impossible. I reached a section where my right leg passed through a circular frame. My torso curved around another support. To continue, my left arm needed to cross to the opposite side of the leg. There was no route. The arm was trapped by the loop created between my leg, torso, and frame. I could back up, but the intended forward path required changing which side of my own loop the arm occupied. That was topology. I suddenly understood the warning. Not phasing, not teleporting. The system was pushing my flexibility toward configurations where I could thread parts of myself through loops, so extreme that normal body structure made the order of limbs the limiting factor. I tried passing my hand beneath the leg. No room. Above it. Blocked. Around the frame. Too far. The clock kept running. 47 minutes remaining. I backed up 2 centimeters, changed my shoulder angle, tried again. Nothing. The 5th threshold condition appeared. For the first time, it revealed itself while I was already attempting it. Condition. resolve a self-interlocking movement without external release. I wanted to ask the system who wrote these sentences and whether they were bullied by furniture as a child. No answer. I examined my position. My arm did not need to pass around the entire leg if the leg itself could change shape enough to create a route. Segmental flexibility. I curved my thigh inward. Not just at the hip, along the length. My knee shifted sideways. My lower leg curved opposite. A small opening appeared between my leg and torso. Still too small. I compressed my shoulder. Turned my wrist, curved the forearm. My hand entered the opening, then stopped at the elbow. I curved the upper arm. The elbow followed. My shoulder crossed to the other side. The loop was resolved. The blue screen flashed. Condition complete. 5th adaptation threshold reached. Interlaced flexibility unlocked. I felt something new immediately. Not more range. Awareness. I looked like somebody had vacuum-sealed a frat boy's bad decisions into a human knot. Every loop formed by my body suddenly felt obvious. Every possible route for a hand, foot, arm, or leg through those loops became intuitive. My body anticipated not only external shapes, but its own changing geometry. I could feel which movement would tighten a configuration, and which would open it. It was like gaining a map of my own knots. I continued through the Mobius cage. The next section forced both arms through a loop formed by my legs. I threaded them. Then one leg through a loop formed by an arm and my torso. I redirected smoothly. I became a moving knot that constantly tied and untied itself. The commentator stopped trying to describe positions. One simply yelled, "Nope," for 30 seconds. I respect professional surrender. I cleared the cage with 29 minutes remaining. Section 6 was worse. The designers called it the human zipper. 2 rows of padded bars interlocked, leaving a narrow zigzag path. To move forward, I had to alternate sections of my body from left to right through gaps barely larger than 5 centimeters. Head left, shoulder right, chest left, hip right, leg left, then reverse. I moved like a shoelace being threaded through a giant sneaker. The interlaced awareness made it possible. I knew exactly when to pass an arm through a loop created by my own leg, when to curve a limb to open space, when to compress and when to rotate. At the final meter, I was so interwoven with the bars that the overhead camera made me look like a human plate of noodles. Mina said my ancestors were watching from heaven, asking why they had bothered developing vertebrae. I laughed and nearly lost my grip. I cleared the zipper. 18 minutes remaining. The final section was called No Gap. That name concerned me. I entered a large clear chamber. The exit was visible on the opposite wall. A circular opening, 4.5 centimeters wide, the smallest opening I had ever attempted. No trick, no removable panel, no alternate route, just one hole. Hyun's voice came through the speaker. He said the designers believed this was beyond my current limit. They expected the course to end here. If I could not pass, I could simply stop. The door behind me would open. No shame. I walked to the circle. 4.5 centimeters. My hand could pass with compression. My wrist followed. My forearm took effort. I got the ring-like opening over one shoulder. Then I reached my head. 5.5 centimeters had been possible at the showcase. 5 centimeters at the ring forest had barely worked. 4.5 was different. I turned my face. My forehead stopped. I adjusted. Stop. I tried another angle. The opening pressed against my cheek and temple. No pain, but no route. 10 minutes remaining. I backed out. The audience murmured. I tested with my foot. Maybe entering legs first would change the order. Foot passed. Ankle. Lower leg with a curve. The pose had the moral cleanliness of a motel hot tub, yet somehow my blood pressure was perfect. Knee. Thigh compressed and shifted. Hip. That was promising. I continued backward until the opening reached my waist, then ribs, then shoulders. Finally my neck. My head remained inside the chamber. Everything else was through. That was possibly the stupidest position I had ever occupied, which was saying something. My entire body was outside except my head. Mina's voice came faintly through the wall speaker, asking whether I had accidentally mailed myself without the recipient. I ignored her. The head was still the limit, but entering backward had changed one thing. My neck and shoulders were already outside, giving me a different angle of pull. I relaxed. Not my structure, my effort. I let the system anticipate the target shape. My jaw shifted. My cheek compressed. My ear folded completely. My neck curved. I rotated while applying steady pressure from outside with my hands. The opening moved past my chin. then mouth, nose, eyes, forehead. My head popped through. I landed backward on the padded platform. The clock showed 3 minutes and 12 seconds. For a moment, zero clearance was silent. Then every screen in the warehouse flashed green. I had cleared the course. Hyun ran onto the platform screaming like he had won instead of lost. The designers followed. Several were laughing. One bowed to me. Another handed me a marker and asked me to sign the 4.5 centimeter exit plate. I wrote, "Needs work." He called me an asshole. Fair. The zero clearance special became the biggest program I had ever appeared on. The final squeeze was replayed everywhere. People argued about whether it was real. Hana released a carefully limited explanation confirming there had been no digital alteration and no dangerous compression. That explanation somehow made people more disturbed. I received congratulations from athletes, performers, companies, celebrities, and the grandmother from my first limbo contest. She sent me a photo of herself holding the television remote beside my face on screen and wrote, "Still training." I felt more threatened by that message than by any mystery ring. Then, 2 days after zero clearance aired, I finally called Emil's number. He answered on the second ring. He did not say hello. He said, "Took you long enough." I told him I had been busy disrespecting a billionaire's building. He said he had watched. Then he asked whether I wanted to meet someone else. Not a scientist, not a manager, someone like us. I asked how many us there were. Emil paused. Then he said, "Enough to make your 1% look less lonely." That was a deeply weird sentence. I agreed to meet. The location he sent me was not an underground bunker. It was not a secret lab. It was not an abandoned warehouse. It was a pancake restaurant. Mina looked at the address and said the conspiracy had excellent reviews. Victor insisted on coming. Hana insisted even harder. I told all three of them no. Then I arrived at the restaurant and discovered all three sitting 2 tables away wearing hats. My spine was bending like it owed money to a stripper named Destiny and had seen her crossing the parking lot. They were the worst spies alive. Mina's hat said incognito. I considered pretending not to know them. Emil arrived alone. He sat across from me, ordered banana pancakes, and placed 1 wooden disc on the table. Then he told me his balance improved every day. 1%. Same timing. Same blue messages. Different trait. He had received the first message 3 years earlier. I forgot about the pancakes. He could stand on surfaces that should be too unstable. Not because he had infinite grip, but because his body continuously found and corrected balance. Over time, the system had expanded what counted as a recoverable position. He had thresholds too. He had conditions. He had no idea who created the system. I asked whether there were more people. He said yes, not many. He personally knew 4. 1 became 1% more precise every day. 1 became 1% better at holding breath. 1 became 1% more coordinated with both hands. And 1 person, according to Emil, had an ability so stupid he refused to explain it before dessert. Mina, listening from 2 tables away, dropped a spoon. Emil looked directly at her, then at Victor, then at Hana. He asked whether my friends always conducted surveillance like a middle school theater club. I said unfortunately yes. He waved them over. The secret meeting became brunch. That felt right. Emil told us there was no organization in the dramatic sense. No uniforms. No secret government. Just a loose private group of people comparing notes because nobody else understood the messages. They called themselves the Percent Club. Mina said the name sounded like a discount rewards program. Emil said she was welcome to suggest something better. She suggested stat goblins. The Percent Club survived. Then Emil explained why he had contacted me. Every person he knew had reached a major system change somewhere between day 300 and day 400. The exact day varied. The message called it Phase 2. He would not tell me what happened after that. I asked why. He smiled. Because apparently everyone deserved to experience the panic personally. I hated him already. I looked at my count. Day 286. Phase 2 was somewhere ahead, and for the first time I knew I was not the only person waiting for it. Knowing Phase 2 existed did not make the next 79 days calmer. It made me insufferable. Every morning I woke up, checked the blue message, gained another 1%, and wondered whether today was the day my body would receive a software update nobody had bothered to document. Mina started calling me patch notes. Victor called me distracted. Hana called me twice a day asking whether I had noticed any new sensations. My mother called asking whether I was still eating vegetables. Only one of these people truly understood long-term health. The Percent Club turned out to be exactly as organized as Emil had described, which meant barely organized at all. They had a group chat. At this point I was basically anatomically cheating on every textbook I had ever owned. and the textbooks had screenshots. That was basically the organization. No headquarters, no uniforms, no secret handshake, although I offered to invent one and immediately had the offer rejected because my version involved 3 elbows and was considered discriminatory. I met 2 members over video. Nari had become 1% more precise with voluntary movement every day. She could place a fingertip on a moving mark with ridiculous accuracy, stop her hand within millimeters at speed, and repeat the same motion so consistently that Hana nearly abandoned our lab to study her instead. The other member, Luis, improved at breath control. He had strict safety protocols and trained with professionals, which made him the most responsible person in the group and therefore suspicious. Emil still refused to explain the member with the stupid ability. I assumed he was saving it for emotional damage. None of them understood the origin of the messages. None could make the system appear on command. None had found a way to stop the daily increase. And all of them had experienced Phase 2 differently. Emil told me only one useful thing. Phase 2 did not replace the original ability. It changed what the system considered part of the ability. That sentence followed me everywhere. What counted as flexibility? Joint range? Compression? Curvature? Body loops? Movement through space? Apparently the system had been answering that question more aggressively than I was. By day 295, my narrow gap record had dropped below 4.5 centimeters in carefully controlled lab conditions. I stopped publicizing exact measurements because the numbers encouraged idiots to imitate me. Instead, our videos focused on visual puzzles. Could I enter a giant sculpture through its decorative openings? Could I untangle myself from a web of soft bands without releasing either hand? Could I move through a room filled with hanging hoops while carrying a tray of drinks? That last challenge was Mina's idea. She claimed it combined flexibility and practical skill. I claimed she wanted to see me pour juice into my own ear. We were both right. I began with 4 cups on a tray. The room contained 40 hanging hoops at different heights and angles. I could not set the tray down. I ducked through the first hoop, turned sideways through the second, passed my arm through the third while the tray stayed level in the other hand. At the fourth, I bent backward while rotating my wrist to keep the drinks upright. By hoop 10, my body was weaving through the course like an irresponsible ribbon dancer. By hoop 20, one leg was wrapped around a support, my torso formed a loop, and the tray had somehow passed beneath my own armpit twice. Then I misjudged a rotation. 1 cup slid. I caught it with my foot. The audience watching the live stream screamed. I balanced the cup on the top of my shoe, passed my leg through the next hoop, brought the foot beside my shoulder, and transferred the cup back onto the tray with my teeth holding the straw out of the way. The movement was so cursed it felt illegal to have knees nearby. Mina shouted that I had become a haunted restaurant server. I finished with 3 full cups and 1 half-full cup. The missing half was in my hair. The comments called it a success. I called it sticky bullshit. Day 300 arrived with the most predictable invitation possible. A television network wanted a 300 Days of Flexibility special. I refused. Then they offered to let Mina design part of the set. I refused harder. Then they offered a donation to the animal shelter that had connected us with several rescue cases. I accepted. Damn morals. The show compared my current ability with old footage. They recreated the original limbo bar from Day 31. Back then, 30 centimeters had been dramatic. Now I did not even limbo. I stood beside the bar, folded my torso around my own legs, rotated sideways, and passed under while keeping my feet almost straight. The host walked off the stage for emotional recovery. They recreated the acrylic box from Day 100. I had once needed a careful sequence to fit inside. Now I entered in seconds, curled into a spiral, and had enough room left to wave. They recreated the 7-centimeter geometry wall slit. I passed through without stopping. They brought out a replica of the 6-centimeter metal ring. I moved it from my hand all the way over my body and off 1 foot in one continuous motion. The audience made the same sound people make when a magician removes a live pigeon from somewhere pigeons should never be. Then the network revealed a surprise guest. The grandmother from my first limbo contest walked onto the stage. She was 81 years old and still terrifying. Her name was Mrs. Kang, which I somehow had never learned because the internet had simply called her Limbo Grandma for 9 months. She challenged me again. The bar dropped. 1 meter, 70 centimeters, 50. She cleared all of them. 40. She cleared it. 35. She cleared it. I looked at her in genuine fear. She pointed at me and told me not to disrespect training just because I was built like boiled pasta. I promised. Then it was my turn. I formed a loop with my body and rolled under the bar sideways without ever placing my torso above knee height. Mrs. Kang stared at me. Then she smacked me with a towel. The audience exploded. I accepted defeat spiritually. After filming, she made me stretch with her for an hour. I tried explaining that stretching no longer increased my range. She said that was not an excuse for skipping warm-ups. I have faced impossible architecture, moving walls, and mysterious biological systems. Nothing scares me like an elderly athlete with standards. Around day 310, I discovered I could tie something close to an actual knot with my own body, not a metaphorical pretzel shape. A genuine overhand-style interlacing configuration. Hana supervised. Victor spotted me. Mina brought popcorn. I sat on a padded floor, curved one leg around my torso, threaded my upper body through the loop, passed the opposite arm behind the leg, rotated my hips, then curved the second leg through the remaining space. I was flexible enough to turn my own body into a thirst trap for people with deeply questionable search histories. Interlaced awareness showed me how each loop tightened. I adjusted gradually. My body became a compact woven shape with my head in the center and both feet emerging from opposite sides. I was comfortable. That sentence should not have been possible. Hana checked circulation and pressure. Normal for me. Victor walked around the knot twice. He asked where my left hand was. I had to think about it. Then I realized I did not know. Mina started laughing before I even finished the sentence. It took me 15 seconds to locate my own hand behind my right thigh. There are low points in every career. Temporarily misplacing a limb while fully conscious is one of them. I untied myself smoothly. The system displayed no new threshold. Apparently becoming human macrame was no longer impressive enough. Day 319 brought the stupid ability. Emil finally introduced us to the fifth member of the Percent Club, a quiet man named Toby who lived in New Zealand. Toby's daily improvement was 1% more control over goosebumps. I stared at the video call. Toby stared back. I asked whether he was serious. He rolled up his sleeve. A wave of goosebumps moved from his wrist to his shoulder in a perfect spiral. Then another wave formed a smiley face. I laughed so hard I fell off my chair. Toby had reached phase 2 and could control the tiny muscles around hair follicles with absurd precision. He could create patterns across his skin, raise specific hairs, and apparently generate enough localized texture on his forearms to improve grip slightly. It was both completely useless and scientifically horrifying. Mina called him Skin Braille Jesus. Toby said he had heard worse. The Percent Club had found its king. That meeting helped me relax. Whatever phase 2 brought, it did not have to mean destiny or disaster. Sometimes the universe gave a man 3 years of daily improvement and he used it to make a goosebump portrait of Pikachu on his thigh. Maybe existence was simply drunk. I could live with that. By day 330, my public performances had evolved into moving puzzles. I could enter a tangled frame, thread my limbs through multiple loops, reverse my torso inside the structure, and emerge from an opening nowhere near the expected route. People stopped comparing me to noodles as often. Now they compared me to knots. Progress. A fashion designer even built a costume around my movement. The outfit used flexible fabric panels that changed shape as I folded, creating the illusion that I was transforming into different silhouettes. During the runway show, I moved from a normal standing shape into a narrow curved line, then a spiral, then a ring, then a folded square-like posture. At the final turn, my head appeared between 2 layers of fabric where nobody expected it. A front-row celebrity dropped her phone. I felt powerful. Then I tripped on the hem backstage and landed inside a garment rack. My shoulders were doing the kind of shady shit that makes a skeleton ask for separate bank accounts. Balance was Emil's stat, not mine. The internet never saw that clip because Mina, in a rare act of mercy, deleted it. She later charged me dinner for the deletion. Mercy has invoices. Day 341 was when my ability became useful in the most ridiculous rescue of the year. A small robotic cleaning machine at a shopping center rolled under a decorative indoor fountain structure and got trapped behind a maintenance barrier. The robot itself was not valuable enough to dismantle the fountain for, but it contained a memory card with mapping data the maintenance team wanted back. The gap beneath the structure was absurdly narrow and curved around several pipes. Someone on staff recognized me because, of course, they did. I happened to be there for lunch. 10 minutes later, with permission and the fountain switched off, I was lying on the floor in expensive pants I immediately regretted wearing. I slid under the decorative base. The route narrowed. I curved around a pipe, then another. At the tightest point, I had to form an S shape across my entire body while one arm threaded through a gap beside my own knee. I reached the robot. It beeped at me. I grabbed it, then realized the robot was wider than the path I had used. I could escape. The robot could not. The maintenance manager asked if I could retrieve only the memory card. I looked for an access panel. The robot rolled backward away from me. I followed. It rolled again. I swear that machine knew. For 5 minutes I chased a circular vacuum robot through a space 12 centimeters high while moving like a possessed shoelace. When I finally caught it, my face was beside one pipe, my foot was above my shoulder, and my ass was wedged between two decorative supports. I removed the card. The robot immediately drove away again. Ungrateful little disc-shaped bastard. When I emerged, a crowd had gathered. Someone applauded. I was covered in dust and had fountain algae on my sleeve. This was apparently heroism now. Day 350 approached. No phase 2. 355. Nothing. 360. Still nothing. Emil refused to give hints. Hana became increasingly obsessed with daily testing. Victor told both of us to stop staring at the number and keep training normally. Mina had a different idea. If 1 year was approaching, we should celebrate 1 year. Not with a serious documentary, not with a retrospective interview, with a course. Of course, she called it the anniversary gauntlet. Every major stage of my year would return in one continuous run. The laundry basket, the limbo bar, ropes, the elevator-style hatch, the acrylic box, geometry wall, spiral tube, metal rings, moving panels, interlaced cage, and one final obstacle kept secret from me. Victor designed the transitions. Hana approved the safety. Hyun donated part of the zero clearance set. Yeri sent moving wall components from Dream Harbor. Sora agreed to host. I had become a sentient pretzel with adult internet access, which was apparently civilization's punishment for inventing live streaming. Mrs. Kang demanded a guest appearance and nobody was brave enough to refuse. We scheduled the live stream for day 365, exactly 1 year after the blue message first appeared. The morning of the event, I woke before sunrise. For a few seconds I lay still. I remembered day 1, the stiff back, the unreachable toes, the confusion. Then the blue text appeared. Day 365. Flexibility increased by 1%. No phase 2. I laughed. Of course. The system had allowed an entire production company to build a 1-year celebration around a number, and then refused to respect television timing. I went to the studio anyway. The live stream began that evening. Millions were watching. I stood at the start line wearing plain black athletic clothes. No costume, no dramatic armor. Just me. Sora counted down. I moved. The laundry basket came first. I stepped into it, folded, compressed, disappeared completely, then flowed out the other side through a cutaway opening added for the course. 5 seconds. The limbo bar followed. I did not bend backward. I formed a sideways loop and rolled beneath it. Ropes dropped around my wrists and ankles. I threaded my legs through my arms, curved my forearms, reversed one loop, and stepped free without untying a knot. The elevator hatch waited overhead. I passed through the narrow service gap instead of the main opening. The acrylic box came next. I entered, tied myself into a compact knot, passed through a small circular side port, one section at a time, and unfolded while moving. The audience screamed. Geometry wall. The old 7-centimeter slit looked enormous now. I flowed through without slowing. Spiral tube. I followed all 3 turns in seconds. Metal ring. I passed my entire body through while running my limbs in sequence. Moving panels. I bent around them. Rotating bars. I curved through. Interlaced cage. I threaded arms through legs, torso through loops, shoulders around frames, tying and untying myself as I advanced. I was not fighting my body anymore. That was the biggest difference from day 1. I did not think, can I bend this far? I thought, what shape solves this? Then my body found it. I reached the final platform in under 6 minutes. Mina stood beside a curtain covering the secret last obstacle. She looked far too pleased with herself. The curtain dropped. Behind it was a completely ordinary wooden doorway. No narrow gap, no lock, no tunnel. Just a doorway. I stared at her. The audience laughed. Then I noticed the sign. Reach the other side without passing any part of your body through the doorway. I looked around. The doorway stood alone in the center of the platform, attached to a thick rectangular frame. I could walk around it, obviously, but that would violate the spirit of the challenge. Mina explained the real rule. I had to begin on one side and end on the other while maintaining contact with the frame the entire time. My torso looked like it had received a booty call from Euclidean geometry and chosen violence instead. I could go over, under, or around the frame, but I could never release it completely. That sounded easy. Then she revealed the second rule. My left hand had to remain holding a marked handle on the starting side. My whole body needed to finish on the opposite side without letting that hand move from the handle. I examined the frame. The handle sat inside a closed loop of wood. If my hand stayed there, my body could move around the outside, but eventually the arm itself created a topological problem. I would have to somehow transfer my entire body to the other side of the frame while the hand remained anchored through the loop. This was exactly the kind of self-interlocking problem that had triggered the fifth threshold. I smiled. Mina saw the smile and immediately regretted something. I gripped the handle with my left hand. Then I started climbing around the outside of the frame. One leg over, torso curved, right arm around. I moved until nearly everything was on the far side. Only my left arm remained threaded through the wooden loop to the starting side handle. I could not pass the shoulder through the solid frame. I could not release the handle. I tried threading my head beneath my arm, then my torso. I formed a loop, reversed it, curved the arm, shifted the shoulder, still trapped. The audience became quiet. I changed angles. My forearm curved, upper arm curved, shoulder compressed, no root. For the first time all night, I stopped moving. Then the blue screen appeared, not in the corner of my vision, directly in front of me. 1 year complete. Phase 2 requirements satisfied. I forgot the audience existed. A new line formed slowly. Original trait, flexibility. Phase 1 interpretation. Increase available motion within existing anatomical structure. My heart started pounding. Another line appeared. Phase 2 interpretation. Increase available anatomical structure for motion. I read it twice, then 3 times. I had no idea what that meant. The next message answered me. Adaptive articulation unlocked. I felt a strange sensation in my left forearm. Not pain, not pressure, a possibility. The middle of my forearm, halfway between wrist and elbow, suddenly felt the way an elbow feels before you bend it. There was no joint there. There had never been a joint there. But my body now understood that point as bendable. I stared at it. Then, very slowly, I bent my forearm in the middle. A clean 90-degree angle formed where no joint existed. The bones did not break. The muscles did not weaken. The skin did not tear. The entire section reorganized into a stable new articulation as naturally as bending a finger. The audience made one unified sound of absolute spiritual rejection. Mina dropped her microphone. Victor stood up so fast his chair fell over. Hana screamed, "Do not move," which was an unfortunate instruction to give me at that exact moment, because the new bend changed the topology of the problem. There are bad poses, and then there are poses so filthy looking that your own reflection should charge you a cleaning fee. My anchored arm could fold around the wooden loop in a way that had been impossible seconds earlier. I created another temporary bend above the first, then one near the shoulder. My arm zigzagged around the frame while my hand remained on the handle. I threaded my torso through the new space. My body moved completely to the far side. Then I released the extra bends. My arm returned to normal. Same length, same strength. Same elbow, same wrist, except now, apparently, same was a flexible concept too. I let go of the handle. The challenge was complete. Nobody cheered for 2 full seconds. Everyone was too busy processing the fact that my forearm had just developed temporary elbows like it was downloading joints from the cloud. Then the studio exploded. I stood on the finished platform staring at my hands. The blue message was still there. Phase 2 active. Daily increase continues. 1% more flexible tomorrow. I thought that was the end of the message. Then one final notification appeared beneath it. New Phase 2 condition detected. Target. Create an articulation where no human articulation has ever existed. Progress, 0%. I stared at the sentence. Mina ran onto the platform asking what had happened. Victor was right behind her. Hana was already shouting questions faster than language could support. My phone began vibrating in my pocket. Emil. Of course it was Emil. I answered. He was laughing before I said anything. I told him I hated him. He said congratulations. Then he told me the Percent Club had been waiting for this, because now I qualified for something they had never mentioned. I asked what. He told me to check my messages. A file arrived. No explanation. Just an image of a black invitation card. Across the center were 6 words. The non-standard games accept your entry. Below that was a date, 3 weeks away, and beneath the date were 5 silhouettes. One standing on the tip of a swaying pole, one holding a tiny object between 2 fingers, one underwater, one covered in a pattern of raised skin, and one silhouette folded into a shape I had never seen before. Not me, someone else. Someone whose body looked even more anatomically offensive than mine. I zoomed in. Mina leaned over my shoulder. Victor stopped talking. Hana went completely silent. The silhouette had too many bends. Way too many. Then another blue message appeared. It was not my daily update. It was a challenge notification. Opponent trait detected. Compatibility unknown. I looked from the message to the invitation, then down at my own arm. I created one temporary joint in the middle of my forearm, then another, then a third. My arm curved into a perfect square corner pattern while every muscle remained strong. Mina stared at it and whispered that my skeleton had just installed mods. I told her that was the dumbest possible way to describe the most insane moment of my life. She said it was still accurate. Unfortunately, she was right. Tomorrow I would become another 1% more flexible, then another, and for the first time since this started, I was about to meet someone whose body might be even more ridiculous than mine. I had no idea what the non-standard games were. I had no idea what Phase 2 would let me become. I had no idea where a human body could possibly put a joint that no human had ever had before. But as I stood there with millions of viewers screaming, my friends yelling, my phone exploding with notifications, and 3 temporary elbows sitting comfortably between my wrist and shoulder, I realized something important. 1 year ago, I could not touch my toes. Now, geometry itself had started looking nervous, and I was only on day 365.